Chapter 1. Meet Charles Bukowski, the anti-hero who defies the conventions of success. This guy was a mess, an alcoholic, a womanizer, a compulsive gambler, a deadbeat, and yes, even a poet. Who'd ever thought to look to him for life advice? Despite his rough exterior, Bukowski's story is a fascinating case study in resilience. For decades, his work was rejected by anyone who mattered. Editors, agents, publishers, they all dismissed him as a talentless hack. His writing was deemed crude, disgusting, depraved. Rejection slips stacked up, and Bukowski sank deeper into an abyss of depression, fueled by booze. His day job at the post office paid peanuts, which he promptly spent on liquor and lost at the racetrack. Nights were filled with solo drinking and sporadic attempts at poetry on a battered typewriter. Waking up on the floor was a regular occurrence. 30 years passed in a haze of substance abuse, addiction, and aimlessness. That is, until a small publishing house editor took a peculiar liking to Bukowski. The editor offered little hope of financial gain or widespread recognition, but something about the broken writer resonated. Bukowski chose to starve rather than conform to societal norms. He penned his debut novel, Post Office, in just 3 weeks. The dedication read, "To nobody." This was Bukowski's ticket to stardom, albeit begrudgingly. He'd go on to publish 6 novels and hundreds of poems, selling millions of copies worldwide. Yet, his epitaph remains, "Don't try." Here lies the paradox: despite his success, Bukowski was a self-proclaimed loser. He accepted his shortcomings and wrote about them honestly. Genius wasn't in overcoming obstacles, it was in embracing his flaws and sharing them without apology. Success came not from trying to be someone else, but from embracing his true nature. Today, our society fixates on positivity, urging us to improve ourselves, become better versions of ourselves. We're sold affirmations, self-help books, and motivational seminars promising a utopian existence. But this emphasis on what we lack only reinforces our perceived shortcomings. No one stands in front of a mirror repeating affirmations to remind themselves they're already happy. Consider the wisdom of the Texan phrase, "The smallest dog barks the loudest." Confidence isn't proven, it's inherent. Wealth isn't flaunted, it's assumed. If you're chasing something, you're reinforcing the notion that you lack it. In Bukowski's world, success wasn't about achieving perfection, it was about accepting imperfection. His tale challenges our notion of success as a linear journey toward greatness. Maybe, just maybe, it's time to rethink the way we approach life, to let go of the need for constant improvement and instead, simply be. Have you ever found yourself caught up in a never-ending cycle of anxiety, guilt, and self-doubt? It's a phenomenon I like to call the feedback loop from hell. You know the drill. Imagine you're anxious about confronting someone in your life. Suddenly, you start wondering why you're so anxious, and that anxiety cripples you even further. Then, you become anxious about being anxious, and before you know it, you're trapped in a vicious loop of self-doubt. Or maybe you're struggling with anger issues. You get frustrated over tiny things, and that frustration fuels your anger even more. But then, you start beating yourself up over being angry, and that's when the real chaos begins. You're angry at yourself for being angry, it's a never-ending cycle. Sound familiar? If so, you're not alone. Many of us are trapped in this feedback loop, and it's driving us crazy. But here's the thing, it's not just you. This is a societal issue. We've created a culture that perpetuates the notion that we need to give a fuck about more, buy more, achieve more, and consume more. We're constantly bombarded with messages telling us to care about every little thing, from the latest gadgets to the perfect selfie stick. But what's the real reason behind this constant barrage of consumerism? It's simple, giving a fuck about more stuff is great for business. However, giving too many fucks is terrible for our mental health. It leads us to focus on the superficial and fake, chasing after a mirage of happiness and satisfaction. The truth is, the key to a good life isn't about giving a fuck about more, it's about giving a fuck about less. Let's face it, folks, our brains are wired to think about our thoughts. We can ponder the absurdity of watching Miley Cyrus music videos on YouTube and simultaneously criticize ourselves for enjoying them. But here's the catch: our society has conditioned us to believe that negative emotions like anxiety, fear, and guilt are unacceptable. Social media platforms showcase everyone else's highlight reels, making us feel inadequate and stuck. In the past, when people felt miserable, they'd shake it off and move on. Not anymore. Today, we're constantly exposed to curated perfection, and it's suffocating. We feel bad about feeling bad, we're guilty about feeling guilty, and we're angry about being angry. It's a toxic cycle that's become an epidemic. So, what's the solution? It's simple yet profound: not giving a fuck. When you accept that the world is imperfect and that it's okay to feel bad sometimes, you break free from the feedback loop from hell. You acknowledge that feeling like crap doesn't define you, and that's liberating. As George Orwell once said, to see what's in front of one's nose requires a constant struggle. The answer lies right in front of us, but we're too distracted by the noise to notice. Let's take a step back, breathe, and remember that it's okay to be human. It's okay to feel imperfect. By embracing our imperfections, we can find peace and acceptance, and that's the ultimate key to living a fulfilling life. Have you ever stopped to think about why we're so unhappy despite having all the trappings of success? Our crisis isn't about being broke or hungry, it's about being spiritually unfulfilled. We've got access to endless information and opportunities, yet we're left wondering what truly matters. The happiness industry has us convinced that we need to work harder to find joy. But what if I told you that the pursuit of happiness is actually a source of unhappiness? The more we strive for positivity, the less satisfied we become. Think about it: the more we crave wealth, the poorer we feel, regardless of our bank account balance. The more we chase validation, the more insecure we become, regardless of our physical appearance. I remember a wild night on acid where I realized that the more I moved towards something, the further away it seemed to be. Yeah, I'm using my psychedelic experiences to drive home a philosophical point about happiness. Listen, folks, it's time to rethink our approach. Albert Camus once said, "You'll never be happy if you continue searching for what happiness consists of." Or, as I like to simplify it, don't try. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Mark, what about my dream car, my beach body, or that mansion by the lake? The things we tell ourselves we must have to be fulfilled. Ever notice that when you genuinely care less about something, you tend to excel at it? When you're not invested in the outcome, you're often the ones who end up succeeding. Sometimes, when you stop worrying about something, it magically falls into place. Here's the fascinating part: not giving a fuck is the key to unlocking true fulfillment. Pursuing the positive can be a negative experience, while embracing the negative leads to the positive. The pain you push yourself through in the gym yields better overall health and energy. Facing your failures in business helps you learn what it takes to succeed. Opening up about your insecurities makes you more confident and charismatic. Confronting your fears and anxieties builds courage and perseverance. Think about it: everything worth achieving requires overcoming obstacles. Trying to avoid suffering, struggles, or failures only leads to more suffering. Hiding what's shameful perpetuates shame. Pain is an integral part of life, and trying to eliminate it destroys everything else. By letting go of our attachment to pain, we become unstoppable. My life has been marked by both giving and not giving a fuck. Those moments of non-attachment were the turning points that defined my journey. Maybe you know someone who's achieved incredible things without caring about the outcome. Perhaps you've experienced a moment when you didn't give a fuck and excelled beyond your wildest dreams. Not giving a fuck is about facing your fears head-on and taking action. It's about staring down life's toughest challenges and emerging stronger. While it might seem simple on the surface, it's a profound shift in perspective. So, let's dive deeper into this concept and explore its depths together. Who knows, you might just discover that not giving a fuck is the key to unlocking your true potential. Imagine you're driving down the highway with a brand new bag of burritos under the hood. Now, I'm not entirely sure what that phrase means, but who cares? It's a fun image, so let's roll with it. We spend our lives giving too many fucks in situations where they simply don't warrant attention. We fuss over small stuff, the cashier who gives us pennies as change, a cancelled TV show, or coworkers who ignore our weekend plans. Meanwhile, our credit card debt is through the roof, our pet despises us, and our kids got some serious issues. Yet, we're still fuming about those insignificant annoyances. Here's the harsh truth: you're going to die someday. I know, it's not exactly a comforting notion, but it's essential to remember. You'll join the ranks of everyone you love, and before that happens, you've got a limited number of fucks to give. If you're not thoughtful about which ones you invest in, you'll end up getting burned. Now, I know what you're thinking: what's this not giving a fuck business? Well, it's not about being apathetic, it's about being comfortable with standing out. Being indifferent isn't admirable, it's actually pretty pathetic. Indifferent people are often scared to take risks, so they pretend to be aloof to avoid criticism. They're trapped in a rut, stuck in a gray, emotionless haze, distracted from living life. However, here's a crucial point: you cannot not give a fuck. Our biology demands that we care about something, and thus, we give a fuck. The real question is, what do we choose to care about? How can we learn to give fewer fucks about the things that ultimately don't matter? Take my mom, for instance. She got ripped off by a friend, and I could have just shrugged it off and gone about my day. But I didn't. I chose to stand up for her, to fight for justice. That's what not giving a fuck means. It means not caring about the consequences of taking action. It means being willing to ruffle feathers, to be an outcast, if it aligns with your values. That's what makes someone truly admirable, not the absence of emotions, but the courage to act despite adversity. Think of it this way: the next time you're faced with a tough decision, ask yourself, what am I really giving a fuck about here? Is it worth risking the potential backlash? Or is it something that genuinely matters to me? Remember, the people who give a fuck about the right things, not the easy things, are the ones who truly live. You've likely come across people who just shrug off criticism or rejection, even if it's public humiliation, or have a good sense of humor about their own failures, like accidentally peeing themselves or shitting the bed a few times. These individuals don't let their emotions dictate their actions, they do what they believe in, regardless of the consequences. They're not worried about what others think or their own ego. They reserve their passion for what truly matters: relationships, purpose, and sometimes, burritos. Now, here's a little-known secret about life: you can't make a significant difference in someone's life without also being a source of frustration for others. Adversity is inevitable, no matter where you go. But that's okay. The key is to focus on the challenges you enjoy tackling. Let me ask you, imagine you're at a grocery store, watching an elderly woman berate a teenager at the checkout counter over a 30-cent coupon. Why does she care so much about this trivial issue? She probably spends most of her days alone, with no one to share her life with, struggling financially, and dealing with chronic pain. She may have lost touch with her family and friends. So, she focuses on snipping coupons. It's all she has left to give a fuck about. When faced with a minor setback, like a cashier refusing her coupon, she erupts into a tantrum, reliving past grievances. The issue here is that people who waste their fucks on insignificant issues often don't have anything more meaningful to dedicate their attention to. If you find yourself constantly worrying about petty stuff, like your ex's social media updates or sales on hand sanitizer, chances are, you're not investing in anything more substantial. A famous artist once said that when people have no real problems, their minds create their own. Many of us consider life problems to be mere symptoms of boredom, rather than genuine concerns. Finding meaning in life is the most effective use of your time and energy. If you don't discover what truly matters, your fucks will be wasted on inconsequential issues. Here's another subtlety: you're always choosing what to give a fuck about. People aren't born indifferent, we're naturally concerned about everything. Think back to when you were a child, fussing over minor things like hat colors or friend preferences. As we mature, we learn to prioritize what truly matters. Maturity involves selecting which issues deserve our attention. It's a beautiful thing, you should give it a shot. Maturity means focusing on what's genuinely worthy of our fucks. As the character Bunk Moreland says, that's what you get for giving a fuck when it wasn't your turn to give a fuck. Later in life, our energy levels decline, and our identities solidify. We understand ourselves, flaws and all. This self-acceptance is liberating. We stop trying to control every aspect of life and reserve our dwindling fucks for what truly counts: loved ones, friendships, and personal passions. In surprising ways, this simplification brings happiness. We start to see that maybe that eccentric writer Charles Bukowski was onto something. Don't try to change the world, focus on what truly matters, and you'll find fulfillment. Let's dive back into the story of this wise book, shall we? You might be thinking, Mark, what's the point of this entire thing? Well, my friend, this book is here to help you rethink what you consider truly important in life and what you're willing to let slide. Think of it as a journey to clarity. Now, I'll admit it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but I'm going to propose that our society has been living under a delusion. We've convinced ourselves that it's never okay for things to be tough, for struggles to exist. Newsflash, it's okay for things to suck sometimes. When we accept this reality, we stop beating ourselves up over perceived inadequacies. No more frantic shopping sprees or desperate attempts to numb our emotions with substances. Instead, we can develop a sense of practical enlightenment, a mindset that acknowledges life's inherent difficulties, but also empowers us to face them head-on. You see, practical enlightenment isn't about achieving some mystical state of bliss or avoiding pain altogether. It's about embracing the fact that failure, loss, regret, and even death are an integral part of the human experience. When we learn to accept these aspects of life, we become stronger, more resilient individuals. After all, the only way to conquer pain is to learn how to endure it. Now, this book isn't here to alleviate your problems or pain overnight. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It will show you how to transform your pain into a valuable learning experience, your trauma into a source of strength, and your problems into manageable challenges. Think of it as a guide to navigating life's difficulties with greater compassion, humility, and ease. It's about finding peace amidst turmoil, laughter and tears, and the courage to let go of what's holding you back. This book won't teach you how to achieve success or acquire more stuff. Rather, it will help you identify what truly matters in life and let go of the rest. It's a manual for living lightly, despite life's weighty burdens, resting easy with your deepest fears, and smiling at your tears as they fall. It's a book about giving fewer fucks and trying less. Now, let's step back in time to ancient India, where a king had a peculiar idea. He wanted to create a life of unparalleled luxury for his son, shielding him from any suffering or hardship. He built a palace with high walls, catering to the boy's every whim, and spoiling him rotten. Sounds like a pretty sweet deal, right? Well, the prince grew up feeling empty and unfulfilled, no matter how many luxuries he enjoyed. His life lacked meaning, and every experience felt hollow. One fateful night, he sneaked out of the palace to explore the outside world and witnessed human suffering firsthand. He saw people struggling, hurting, and dying. This encounter left the prince reeling, questioning the very foundation of his life. He realized that his father's efforts to shield him from pain hadn't worked. In fact, they'd created a sense of entitlement and disconnection from the world. The prince ran away, abandoning his royal life to live on the streets, determined to confront the harsh realities of existence. He suffered greatly, experiencing disease, hunger, pain, loneliness, and despair. He teetered on the edge of death, surviving on minimal rations. Years passed, and the prince began to understand that this path of suffering wasn't leading him to any profound epiphanies or inner wisdom. He discovered that, indeed, suffering totally sucks. And what did he learn from this arduous journey? That true fulfillment comes not from escaping pain, but from accepting it, learning from it, and growing through it. Ah, the irony! The prince had been trying to escape the very thing that could have set him free. Let's dive back into the story of the prince, whose journey took him to Consider the concept of Disappointment Panda, a fictional character who tells people uncomfortable truths they need to hear. Imagine this panda knocking on doors, saying, "Hey, having a lot of money doesn't guarantee happiness," or, questioning your partner's trustworthiness is a sign of deeper issues. His messages might be tough to swallow, but they're essential for personal growth. Similarly, let's examine the role of suffering in our lives. Why do we experience pain when we stub our toes or encounter setbacks? Is it merely a cruel joke played by Mother Nature? Not quite. Our body's response to pain serves as a vital feedback mechanism, teaching us about our physical limitations and boundaries. This pain helps us learn from mistakes, avoid harm, and develop a sense of self-awareness. Think about it, wouldn't we rather stumble upon these valuable lessons the hard way, through experiences that leave us feeling miserable, rather than learning them through easier, less painful methods? Pain, in all its forms, is our body's most potent catalyst for action. By embracing this understanding, we can begin to appreciate the importance of impermanence and the value of living in the present moment. As we continue on this journey, remember that our own struggles are not bugs, but features of the human experience. They are opportunities for growth, innovation, and self-discovery. Embracing this mindset allows us to navigate life's challenges with greater ease, understanding that every setback is a chance to reevaluate, adapt, and evolve. As we navigate the twists and turns of life, it's easy to overlook the importance of embracing discomfort and learning from pain. Our early experiences teach us what's good for us versus what's bad, helping us establish boundaries and understand our limitations. We learn to steer clear of scalding hot stoves and electrical sockets not just to avoid harm, but to appreciate the value of caution. But pain isn't just physical, it's also intensely psychological. Think about the ache of heartbreak, the sting of betrayal, or the crushing blow of disappointment. Research reveals that our brains process physical and psychological pain similarly, which explains why that first breakup might have felt like a knife twisting in your gut. Just as physical pain serves as a warning sign, signaling us to adjust our behavior, our psychological pain signals that we're pushing against our limits. While pain often gets a bad rep, it can actually be beneficial. The emotional pain of rejection or failure can be a valuable teacher, guiding us toward wiser choices and better decision-making. In a culture that shields us from every possible discomfort, we risk losing the opportunity to develop resilience and connection to the world around us. We crave a life free from problems and filled with perpetual happiness, but the truth is, problems are an inherent part of the human experience. Consider the words of Disappointment Panda, a wise and witty sage who shared his wisdom over margaritas. Life is essentially an endless series of problems, he said. The solution to one problem is merely the creation of the next one. With a twinkle in his eye, he added, hope for a life full of good problems. As we sip our drinks and ponder the panda's advice, let's acknowledge that happiness isn't something we find, it's something we create by tackling challenges head-on. When we buy a gym membership to address our health concerns, we introduce new problems, like getting to the gym on time or dealing with post-workout sweat. Similarly, scheduling date nights with our partners brings its own set of problems, planning fun activities, budgeting dinner expenses, and nurturing our relationships. Problems never truly disappear, they evolve and escalate. Yet, it's precisely in solving them that we find happiness. Avoidance or denial won't cut it, neither does blaming external circumstances for our struggles. By choosing to face our problems, we break free from misery and cultivate a fulfilling existence. True happiness arises when we identify and tackle problems we genuinely care about. Whether it's mastering a new skill, deepening friendships, or resolving conflicts with loved ones, our pursuit of solutions sparks growth and satisfaction. However, many people sabotage themselves by either denying the presence of problems altogether or adopting a victim mentality, deflecting responsibility onto others or external factors. By acknowledging and confronting our difficulties, we take control of our lives, build character, and foster genuine connections with ourselves and others. So, the next time you encounter a problem, remember that it's not a roadblock, but an invitation to explore, grow, and thrive. Here's a rewritten version of the original text, condensed to about 50%, with added rhetorical questions and insights to engage the American audience. Have you ever found yourself escaping into temporary highs, only to find yourself stuck in a cycle of anger, helplessness, and despair? It's easy to deny and blame others for our problems, isn't it? After all, it's a lot easier than facing the truth and tackling the challenges head-on. These escapes may give us a quick rush, but they're shallow and unproductive ways to navigate life. In fact, the self-help industry often preys on people's desire for instant gratification, selling them quick fixes and band-aids instead of genuine solutions. Think about it, would a genuinely happy person need to stand in front of a mirror and remind themselves how awesome they are? No, true fulfillment comes from within, not from external validation. Now, let's talk about emotions. They're not the end-all be-all of our existence, folks. Emotions serve one primary purpose: to guide us towards beneficial changes in our lives. Think of them as feedback mechanisms, like the pain from touching a hot stove warning us to stay away from it next time. Sadness might lead us to learn from past mistakes, and fear might prompt us to prepare for potential dangers. However, we often get caught up in the idea that emotions dictate our reality. Newsflash, they don't. Negative emotions signal that there's a problem that needs attention, and positive ones reward us for taking the right actions. Yet, we shouldn't blindly trust our emotions. We must question them, just like we question everything else in life. Repression of negative emotions can hinder our growth, causing us to miss valuable opportunities for self-improvement. On the other hand, over-identification with emotions can lead to poor decision-making. Think of it like a 3-year-old who throws a tantrum because they don't get their way, not exactly a recipe for success. We're all searching for that elusive ultimate happiness, aren't we? The idea that we can attain permanent bliss, alleviate all our suffering, and feel fulfilled forever sounds appealing. But here's the thing, it's a myth. Our problems are recursive, and we can't outrun them. Every gain comes with a corresponding loss, every pleasure with a corresponding pain. So, what does it boil down to? Choosing our struggles wisely. Instead of chasing after fleeting highs, let's focus on addressing the root causes of our problems. Ask yourself, what am I truly looking for in life? Is it happiness? Well, that's a given. We all want to be happy. But what does that even mean? Let's dig deeper and explore the real questions. What kind of happiness do I want, and what sacrifices am I willing to make for it? In the end, it's not about avoiding difficulties altogether, but about choosing which struggles to take on and learning to navigate them effectively. So, are you ready to face the music and start making progress, or will you continue to chase after shallow highs? The choice is yours. Imagine you're standing at a fork in the road, staring down two paths. One leads to a life of ease, comfort, and pleasure, the kind where everything goes smoothly, and everyone loves you. We've all been there, haven't we? Who wouldn't want to live a life filled with happiness, great sex, and admiration? It's easy to desire those things. But here's the thing, nobody stops to ask themselves, what pain am I willing to endure? What's fascinating is that most people don't think about this. Instead, they focus on what they want to achieve, rather than what they're willing to struggle for. Let me illustrate this with a few examples. Many folks aspire to land the corner office job, raking in the dough, but few are ready to put in those grueling 60-hour weeks, deal with lengthy commutes, and navigate the corporate ladder. Similarly, people yearn for fantastic relationships and sex, but often shy away from the difficult conversations, awkward silences, and emotional roller coasters that come with them. As a result, they settle for less, wondering, what if, for years until the question shifts to, what else, and eventually, what for? Happiness isn't something you stumble upon, it emerges from the ashes of our experiences. Fulfillment and joy aren't born overnight, they require effort. Whether it's anxiety, loneliness, or the constant battle with a demanding boss, the key to overcoming these challenges lies not in avoiding them, but in confronting and engaging with them head-on. People crave a stunning physique, but achieving one demands embracing the physical strain and dedication required to maintain it. Starting a successful business necessitates tolerating failure and uncertainty. Building meaningful relationships involves enduring the emotional turmoil that comes with rejection and unrequited love. So, the crucial question isn't, what do you want to enjoy? Rather, it's, what pain are you willing to endure? This is the harder, yet more significant, inquiry that has the potential to transform your perspective and life. It's what sets you apart and connects you with others. For instance, during my teenage years and early 20s, I fantasized about becoming a rock star. Every time I heard a killer guitar riff, I envisioned myself performing to a sea of screaming fans, lost in the moment, fingers flying across the fretboard. My fantasy was so vivid that it consumed me, leaving little room for doubts. I believed that success was merely a matter of waiting for the right moment to take action. However, as I delved deeper into this dream, I began to realize that I wasn't passionate about the actual process, the endless practice sessions, finding the perfect band, securing gigs, dealing with equipment issues. What I loved was the idealized version of being a rock star, not the real-life struggles that came with it. In the end, it dawned on me that I wasn't cut out for this lifestyle. I was enamored with the outcome, not the journey. And this realization made me understand that life doesn't work that way. Your true character is revealed by what you're willing to push yourself through. Those who genuinely enjoy the rigors of training are the ones who excel in marathons, triathlons, or whatever challenge they set their sights on. So, let's ask ourselves, what pain are we willing to sustain? Are we prepared to confront the difficulties that lie ahead, or do we shy away from them? The choice is ours, and it's what defines us. Let's dive back into the conversation about what drives us toward success. You see, many people mistakenly believe that the key to achieving greatness lies solely in the end result, the triumph. But life doesn't work that way. What you are, who you become, is defined by the struggles you're willing to endure. Those who enjoy the challenges of the gym often find themselves running marathons and possessing chiseled physiques. Those who thrive in the cutthroat world of corporate politics rise to the top. Artists who revel in the uncertainty of their craft create masterpieces that inspire us all. This isn't about grit or willpower, it's about understanding that our struggles forge our successes. Our problems give birth to new opportunities, which in turn lead to slightly better, slightly upgraded problems. Think of it as an endless upward spiral. We're constantly climbing, always striving to reach the next rung on the ladder. If you ever think you've reached the top, you're missing the point entirely. Because the true joy lies not in the destination, but in the journey itself. Now, let me share a story about a friend of mine, whom we'll call Jimmy. Jimmy was always on the go, always hustling. He'd regale you with tales of his business ventures, his charitable endeavors, and his innovative ideas that would change the world. He was a true go-getter, always pushing the boundaries and expecting everyone around him to be just as driven. But here's the thing, beneath the surface, Jimmy was a deadbeat. He lived off his family's wealth, spinning tales of future success to anyone who would listen. Despite putting in minimal effort, he managed to convince others to invest in his bright ideas, or simply handed out cash to buy him drinks and fancy dinners. People saw right through Jimmy's facade, but he didn't care. In fact, he genuinely believed he was the smartest guy in the room, and those who doubted him were either jealous or just too dumb to understand his genius. He made some money, sure, but mostly through shady deals and borrowed funds. Sometimes, he even convinced people to pay him to speak at events about, well, I'm still not quite sure what he spoke about. As we reflect on Jimmy's story, we're reminded that having high self-esteem wasn't always the goal. Back in the 1960s, psychologists realized that people who held positive thoughts about themselves tended to perform better and cause less trouble. Researchers and policymakers thought that boosting self-esteem could bring about significant social benefits, reduced crime rates, improved academic performance, and increased economic growth. So, starting in the 1970s, self-esteem became a national priority. Educators taught kids to write about their strengths, grade inflation soared, participation trophies were handed out left and right, and preachers assured their congregants that they were each unique and destined for greatness. Fast forward to today, and we have the results. We're not all exceptional, folks. Feeling good about ourselves doesn't automatically translate to achievement unless we have something to back it up. Adversity and failure aren't obstacles to overcome, they're stepping stones to building resilience and success. Teaching people to believe they're invincible and entitled doesn't produce a society of innovators and leaders, it produces a bunch of Jims, who coast through life, convinced they're destined for greatness despite lacking actual talent or effort. So, what does it take to truly succeed? Not a delusional sense of entitlement, but a willingness to face your fears, take calculated risks, and push through adversity. That's where the real magic happens. As I reflect on the story of Jimmy, that charismatic, high self-esteem individual who seemed to glide through life with ease, I'm reminded of the pitfalls of measuring success solely by how positively we feel about ourselves. Don't get me wrong, having a healthy dose of self-confidence is essential, but what's often overlooked is how we respond to our imperfections. You see, a truly confident person isn't afraid to acknowledge their shortcomings. They're willing to confront the dark corners of their personality, to examine their flaws, and to work towards improvement. But entitled individuals, like Jimmy, become so enamored with their perceived greatness that they create an alternate reality where they're always winning, always succeeding, and always deserving of admiration. It's almost as if they're perpetually stuck in a narcissistic bubble, distorting facts to fit their narrative. Every positive experience is proof of their brilliance, and every negative experience is a conspiracy against their magnificence. But here's the thing, this bubble is fragile. Eventually, reality will crash through it, leaving them reeling. Take the case of Jimmy, who's always talking the talk but never walking the walk. His entitled attitude has led him down a path of constant dissatisfaction, where he's forever seeking validation and affirmation. He's like a junkie searching for the next high, always craving that next fix of self-admiration. And yet, there's a difference between genuine confidence and entitlement. True self-assurance comes from acknowledging our weaknesses, from facing our fears, and from learning from our mistakes. When we're honest with ourselves about our flaws, we open ourselves up to growth, to change, and to real progress. In contrast, entitled individuals become experts at deflecting criticism and dismissing concerns. They're masters of spin, convincing themselves and others that they're invincible, that they're above criticism. But this facade is a house of cards, waiting to come crashing down. As I sit in my high school biology class, listening to the teacher drone on about chromosomes and mitosis, I'm transported back to a memory that still haunts me. A knock on the door interrupts the monotony, and I'm summoned to meet with the assistant principal. My heart sinks as I wonder why I've been called out. Little did I know, this was the beginning of a journey that would force me to confront my own vulnerabilities and limitations. As I walk down the deserted hallway, accompanied by Mr. Price, I begin to feel a creeping sense of unease. What's going on? Why am I being taken to his office? The questions swirl in my mind, but I push them aside, unsure of what lies ahead. Let's dive back into the story, shall we? As I walked out of the classroom, I noticed Mr. Price lingering near my desk, a hint of unease etching his expression. "Come with me, please," he said, his voice low and serious, without breaking eye contact. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I trailed behind him to his office. Once inside, he gestured for me to take a seat, but I remained standing, sensing something wasn't quite right. As he closed the door and locked it, the air seemed to thicken, making me fidgety. My palms began to sweat as he started rummaging through my belongings, checking pockets, zippers, and even my gym clothes. "Aha, what are you doing?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant despite the growing sense of unease. Mr. Price's eyes locked onto mine, his expression stern. "Don't play dumb, Mark. I'm looking for something." The word hung in the air like a challenge, and I swallowed hard. What kind of something? His fingers danced across my binder, checking the tiny pockets meant for pens. You know exactly what I'm talking about. The tension between us grew thicker, like a fog rolling in on a cold winter morning. No, I really don't. I protested, trying to sound confident, but my voice trembled slightly. I felt like I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare, unable to wake up. Mr. Price's eyes narrowed. We'll see about that. He turned his attention to my backpack, which seemed to hold 1,000 secrets within its depths. Colored pens, crumpled notes, dusty CDs, and other knickknacks spilled out onto the floor as he searched every nook and cranny. Time warped, and I felt like I was stuck in a time loop, reliving the same excruciating moment over and over. Sweat dripped from my brow, soaking my shirt, as Mr. Price's frustration mounted. His face reddened, and his breathing quickened, like he'd just sucked in a punch. The room grew quiet, except for the sound of my ragged breathing. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do anything to break free from this prison of uncertainty. But my voice caught in my throat, refusing to escape. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mr. Price finished searching my backpack, only to find nothing. He looked crestfallen, his shoulders sagging beneath his suit jacket. No luck, huh? He forced a laugh, but it fell flat. With a heavy sigh, he began gathering my belongings, tossing them carelessly onto the floor. My heart sank, thinking this ordeal was almost over. Almost. As he stood up, his eyes locked onto something on the floor. Wait a minute. He crouched down, his hand closing around the object. There's something here. My world froze as he picked up my backpack, rummaging through its depths once more. A chill crept up my spine as I remembered the secret compartment I'd carved into the bottom of my backpack years ago, a compartment containing something I shouldn't have had. Something that would change everything. As the realization dawned on me, Mr. Price's expression darkened, and his voice dropped to a growl. Looks like we've got a problem, Mark. Growing up, I knew what it meant to be sentenced to a life of death by lameness. My days were spent stuck in my dad's office, filing papers for hours on end after he'd taken me out of homeschooling. But just when I thought I'd finally found my footing, my parents' divorce threw everything off balance. I lost friends, community, and family within a short span of 9 months. My therapist later called this some real traumatic stuff, and I spent years unraveling the damage, trying to become less self-absorbed and entitled. What bothered me most about our household wasn't the explosive fights or harsh words, it was the unspoken issues, the elephant in the room. We were masters at stonewalling, sweeping problems under the rug. Even when the house could have been literally on fire, we'd reassure each other with a reassuring smile, saying, "Everything's fine, it's just a bit warm in here." Fast forward to the divorce. No dramatic scenes, no shouting matches, just a straightforward discussion about logistics. We were told it wasn't our fault, and that nobody cheated on anyone. It was almost surreal. I realized later that my parents, despite being good people, were struggling with their own demons. They're human beings, just like everyone else, with their own stories, problems, and struggles. As I navigated my adolescence, I began to unconsciously believe that I was powerless to change my circumstances. This sense of hopelessness led to entitlement, the notion that I deserved special treatment because I was either uniquely special or uniquely flawed. I started to think that I was an exception to the rule, that the usual standards didn't apply to me. This pattern repeated itself throughout my early adult years, particularly in my relationships with women. I overcompensated for my trauma by seeking validation through casual encounters. It was a vicious cycle. I craved attention, which fueled my self-importance, leading to shallow connections and toxic behavior. I became a player, always on the lookout for someone to complete me, but never truly committing to anyone. Looking back, I realized that my quest for validation was rooted in a deep-seated need to feel worthy. I sought external validation to fill the void left by my parents' inability to address their own issues. As a result, I developed a pattern of self-aggrandizement and overindulgence. I felt entitled to disregard others' feelings, break their trust, and apologize later with flimsy excuses. Entitlement comes in many forms, and it's not limited to the obvious narcissists. There are those who constantly portray themselves as victims, feeling superior due to their perceived suffering. Both mindsets share a common thread, a deep-seated need for self-pity and a refusal to take ownership of one's actions. Here's the thing, every problem you face has been faced by countless others before and will be again. Your struggle isn't unique, nor is your triumph. It's easy to get caught up in the narrative of being a victim or a hero, but the truth lies somewhere in between. By acknowledging that your experiences are shared by others, you can begin to let go of entitlement and start taking responsibility for your life. So, let's strip away the labels and expectations. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, the fact that we're all struggling with our own set of problems. By facing these challenges head-on, we can work towards healing, growth, and genuine connection with others. Have you ever stopped to think about how many people around you, friends, family members, co-workers, struggle with anxiety, depression, or other mental health issues? You're not alone in feeling overwhelmed. Chances are, there are others out there who are facing similar challenges. But let's not diminish the struggles you're experiencing, acknowledge them, validate them, and work toward solutions. However, there's a peculiar phenomenon happening among younger generations. Educators and experts are noticing a concerning trend, a lack of emotional resilience and an inflated sense of entitlement. Students are pushing to remove books from curricula because they might make someone uncomfortable, and speakers are being silenced for sharing opinions that don't align with everyone else's views. This is happening despite living in an era where we're more connected than ever. As we're exposed to various perspectives online, we expect everyone to agree with us and cater to our feelings. Social media platforms showcase the exceptional, the extraordinary, and the sensational, creating unrealistic expectations about what it means to be successful, happy, or fulfilled. The ease of access to information and connectivity has led to a sense of entitlement, where we demand more, without putting in the effort to achieve it. Let's face it, most of us are average in most aspects of our lives. We're not exceptional in multiple areas simultaneously. Being great at something requires dedication, time, and energy. The reality is that we're all, for the most part, ordinary people. However, the media focuses on the extremes, highlighting the best and the worst. We're bombarded with incredible achievements, shocking news, and awe-inspiring stories, making it difficult to grasp the fact that the majority of life lies in the unremarkable middle ground. The constant exposure to exceptional information has conditioned us to believe that being remarkable is the norm. As a result, we feel inadequate, desperate, and anxious, driving us to seek compensation through entitlement and addiction. Some turn to grandiose schemes, while others try to excel academically or athletically. A select few resort to destructive behaviors. Entitlement isn't exclusive to one generation, it's a societal issue. Technology and mass marketing perpetuate this expectation of exceptionality. People feel they must stand out, be more extreme, and assert themselves to be heard or matter. When I reflect on my own insecurities as a young adult, I realize how easily manipulated I was by toxic narratives of masculinity. Those same narratives persist, telling us that to be cool, we must conform to certain standards. It's time to recognize the impact of our environment and the media we consume on our self-perception. By acknowledging that we're not always the center of attention, nor should we be, we can start working towards building genuine connections, empathy, and understanding. Let's strive for a balanced perspective, one that acknowledges the complexities of life and the beauty in the everyday, rather than chasing after the extraordinary. As we navigate the complexities of modern society, we're bombarded with narratives of masculinity that perpetuate unrealistic standards of being cool, desirable, and extraordinary. These stories flood our minds through popular culture, making it increasingly difficult to separate fact from fiction. We're led to believe that to be respected, we must be admired by women, and that sex is the ultimate prize worth fighting for, even if it means sacrificing our dignity. This relentless stream of misinformation exacerbates our existing feelings of inadequacy, leaving us drowning in an ocean of unrealistic expectations. We're constantly reminded that we're not living up to the ideal, and that our problems are insurmountable. The irony is that we're not alone in our struggles. With just a few clicks online, we're confronted with the lives of others who seem to be doing just fine without these problems. Technology, which once opened doors to information, has inadvertently unleashed a torrent of insecurity, self-doubt, and shame into our digital lives. But what happens when we buy into the notion that we must be extraordinary, that we're destined for greatness? We start to believe that average is unacceptable, and that the worst thing we can be is just ordinary. In this environment, the concept of being in the middle becomes synonymous with failure. Many people opt for a different path, proclaiming themselves victims, the most miserable, or the most oppressed. They crave attention, seeking validation in their misery. We're afraid to accept mediocrity, fearing that embracing it will lead to stagnation, a lack of growth, and a life devoid of significance. Yet, this mindset is precisely the problem. By equating a life's value with achievement, we inadvertently conclude that most humans, including ourselves, are worthless. This kind of thinking can lead to a toxic cycle of negativity, affecting not only ourselves but also those around us. Interestingly, individuals who achieve remarkable things often do so not because they believe they're extraordinary, but because they're consumed by a desire to improve. Their drive stems from recognizing that they're not as great as they think they are, that they're merely average, and that there's room for growth. This perspective is antithetical to entitlement. It's about acknowledging imperfection and striving for excellence. The notion that every person can be extraordinary and achieve greatness sounds appealing, but it's little more than an ego-stroking exercise. It may taste sweet going down, but ultimately, it leaves us emotionally malnourished, craving more. To cultivate emotional well-being, we must learn to digest the bitter pill of reality, that our actions aren't as significant as we think, and that most of our lives will be ordinary. Embracing this truth allows us to break free from the weight of expectation and focus on genuine pursuits. By accepting the mundanity of life, we begin to appreciate its simple joys, friendships, creative endeavors, helping others, reading, and laughter shared with loved ones. These experiences might seem dull compared to the promise of greatness, but perhaps that's exactly why they're essential. Maybe it's because they're the very things that truly matter. Transitioning to Chapter 4. The story of Second Lieutenant Hiro Onoda of the Japanese Imperial Army serves as a poignant reminder of the value of suffering. Deployed to the Philippines in 1944, Onoda and his men were tasked with slowing the U.S. advance, knowing that their mission was essentially suicidal. As the war turned in favor of the Allies, Onoda continued to wage guerrilla warfare, despite being vastly outnumbered. The dropping of the atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki sealed Japan's fate, and Onoda became one of the last holdouts, refusing to surrender. His experience raises important questions about the nature of suffering and sacrifice. What drives individuals to continue fighting, even when all hope seems lost? Is it the desire for glory, recognition, or something deeper? As we explore these questions, let us remember that Onoda's story is a testament to the complex interplay between individual agency and circumstance. Imagine being stuck in a never-ending nightmare, fighting a war that's already won. That's exactly what happened to Hiro Onoda, a Japanese soldier who refused to surrender, even when the war was over. In August 1945, just 6 months after the devastating atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Onoda and his comrades were still hiding in the Pacific Islands, oblivious to the fact that the war was indeed over. They continued to fight, causing chaos and destruction wherever they went. Fast forward 5 years, and the U.S. military, in collaboration with the Japanese government, dropped thousands of leaflets across the Pacific, urging the remaining soldiers to lay down their arms and return home. But not Onoda. Convinced that the leaflets were a ruse, he burned them, choosing instead to cling to his orders and continue fighting. As the years passed, the Philippine government tried again, this time sending personal messages from the emperor himself, accompanied by pictures of loved ones. Still, Onoda remained skeptical, convinced that it was all a clever ploy by the Americans. He and his men persisted, terrorizing the local population, stealing their livestock, and committing atrocities that would haunt the islanders for generations. Meanwhile, the legend of Onoda grew, becoming a kind of urban myth in Japan, a heroic figure, a ghostly apparition, a reminder of a nation's troubled past. People romanticized him, critiqued him, or dismissed him altogether as a fairy tale. But amidst this whirlwind, a young adventurer named Norio Suzuki stumbled upon the story. Born after the war, Suzuki was a free-spirited explorer, always on the move, hitchhiking across continents, donating blood for shelter, and living off the land. When he heard about Onoda, he saw an opportunity too good to pass up, a chance to embark on a thrilling adventure that would shake off the suffocating norms of modern Japan. With no training, no gear, and no clear plan, Suzuki set off to find the elusive Lieutenant Onoda. And, incredibly, he succeeded in just 4 days. As Suzuki approached Onoda's hideout, he shouted the lieutenant's name loud enough to echo through the jungle. Onoda, lonely and worn down, welcomed the unexpected visitor. Over time, the two became unlikely friends, bonding over their shared experiences and Suzuki's tales of the outside world. When Suzuki asked Onoda why he'd kept fighting for decades, the latter replied with simplicity, "I followed my orders." Suzuki, the hippie-turned-adventurer, responded, "I'm searching for you, a panda bear, and the abominable snowman, in that order." Two men, bound by fate, connected by a shared desire for adventure and a dash of absurdity, forged an unforgettable bond in the heart of the Philippines. In the annals of human history, two names stand out as testaments to the complexities of the human spirit: Hiro Onoda, the Japanese soldier who spent 3 decades hiding on a small island in the Philippines, and Masanori Suzuki, his companion in arms, who searched for the abominable snowman in the Himalayas until his untimely demise. Both men embarked on seemingly quixotic quests, driven by ideals that seemed to defy reason. What drove these two individuals to dedicate their lives to such obscure pursuits? Was it a desire for glory, or a deep-seated need for meaning? As we delve into their stories, we find that their journeys, though fraught with hardship and danger, held a significance that transcended the mundane. For Onoda, it was a matter of loyalty to a bygone era, a commitment to a code of honor that had defined his generation. For Suzuki, it was the thrill of adventure, the promise of discovery that lay beyond the horizon. Their experiences raise profound questions about the nature of suffering. If we accept that pain and hardship are inevitable, shouldn't we focus on the purpose behind them? Rather than wondering how to escape suffering altogether, we might ask ourselves, why am I suffering? What is the value I derive from this experience? Upon his return to Japan in 1974, Onoda was catapulted to fame, becoming a celebrated figure in his homeland. However, beneath the trappings of celebrity, he struggled to come to terms with a society that had abandoned the very principles he had fought to preserve. His generation's emphasis on tradition and sacrifice gave way to a consumerist, materialistic culture that left Onoda feeling disillusioned and adrift. In the end, he realized that his sacrifices had been made in vain, and that the Japan he knew had ceased to exist. As we explore the concept of self-awareness, we encounter the analogy of an onion. Just as an onion has multiple layers, so does our understanding of ourselves. The first layer involves recognizing our emotions, acknowledging when we're happy, sad, or hopeful. Many struggle with this fundamental aspect of self-awareness, as exemplified in a humorous exchange between a husband and wife. Her, what's wrong? Him, nothing. Her, no, something's wrong. Tell me. Him, I'm fine. Her, are you sure? You look upset. We all possess emotional blind spots, stemming from societal expectations or childhood conditioning. Identifying and addressing these blind spots requires practice and dedication. Moving deeper, we arrive at the second layer of self-awareness, the ability to question why we feel certain emotions. These inquiries help us grasp the root causes of our feelings and, ideally, lead us to alter them. We ask ourselves, why do I feel angry, or why do I feel uninspired? However, there exists an even more profound layer, one that demands tears, the examination of our personal values. This level involves scrutinizing how we define success and failure, how we measure ourselves and others against our standards. This introspection is the most challenging yet essential part of self-awareness, as our values shape the very fabric of our existence. Ultimately, it's this self-reflection that allows us to confront the harsh realities of our lives, just as Onoda faced the emptiness of post-war Japan. In doing so, we may uncover a deeper truth, that our struggles hold meaning only when we infuse them with purpose. Imagine you're stuck in a rut, feeling unhappy and unsure about your path in life. You're not alone. Most people struggle with understanding their own values, which can lead to a never-ending cycle of dissatisfaction. Let's dive into this concept together. The truth is, our values shape the very fabric of our existence. If we're valuing the wrong things or measuring success incorrectly, everything we think, feel, and experience becomes skewed. Many people claim to value honesty and meaningful relationships, but then they go ahead and deceive others or complain about feeling lonely without taking responsibility for their part in the issue. When faced with challenges, people often deflect accountability by blaming others or external circumstances. But what if we looked beneath the surface and explored our core values? Would we find that our decisions are driven by fleeting desires rather than genuine happiness? Self-help gurus sometimes overlook this critical aspect of personal growth. They might focus on providing quick fixes, such as making more money, without addressing the underlying issues driving our unhappiness. Are we truly seeking wealth, or are we attempting to fill an emptiness within ourselves? Do we define success solely by material possessions, or is there a deeper value at play? Let's take a step back and examine our values. Ask yourself, what's really bothering me? When you identify the source of your discomfort, try peeling away the layers. What if the perceived failure isn't actually a failure? What if we've been viewing it from the wrong perspective? Consider a personal scenario. You feel frustrated with your brother for not responding to your texts or emails. Why does this bother you? Perhaps it's because you feel he doesn't care about you. But why does that seem true? Maybe it's because you expect him to prioritize communication above all else. What if that expectation isn't realistic? What if having a good relationship with your brother isn't about frequent contact, but rather about shared experiences or mutual respect? As I reflect on my own life, I realize that my expectations were misguided. I valued closeness over other aspects of our relationship, like mutual respect or trust. This led me to feel like a failure, but what if I'm misjudging the situation entirely? Perhaps I'm comparing myself unfairly to others, ignoring the unique dynamics between my brother and me. The key takeaway here is that we have agency over how we perceive our problems and the meanings we assign to them. Our values and metrics dictate how we navigate life's challenges. Instead of focusing on objective truths, let's explore how we choose to view our situations. The meaning we attach to problems is not set in stone, it's up to us to redefine them based on our values and perspectives. Now, imagine you're Eddie Van Halen, the renowned guitarist who was kicked out of his band in 1983. His music career took off despite this setback. He didn't let the rejection define him. Instead, he reevaluated his approach, found new opportunities, and created iconic songs that continue to inspire fans today. What can we learn from Eddie's story? That even in the face of adversity, we have the power to redefine our values and create new paths forward. Let's dive into the fascinating stories of two musicians who found themselves at a crossroads in their careers, and explore why their perceptions of failure and success were shaped by their personal values and choices. Imagine being part of a promising band on the cusp of stardom, only to be suddenly and unceremoniously booted out by your former bandmates. That's exactly what happened to Dave Mustaine, a talented young guitarist, in 1983. Just as Metallica was about to sign a record deal and release their debut album, Mustaine received a bus ticket home, no warning, no discussion, just a swift kick out the door. As he rode the bus back to Los Angeles, he wondered, what did I do wrong? Will I ever make it in this crazy music business? But instead of letting his disappointment define him, Mustaine channeled his frustration into fueling his ambition. He vowed to form a new band that would surpass his former mate's success. And, oh, did he succeed? With a newfound sense of purpose, Manson recruited top-notch musicians and poured his heart and soul into songwriting and rehearsals. His determination led him to create the iconic band Megadeth, which went on to sell over 25 million albums and tour the world multiple times. Yet, despite his remarkable achievements, Manson's inner narrative remained haunted by the ghosts of his past. Even when he reflected on his journey in a candid interview, he confessed to feeling like a failure, trapped by his own metric of measuring himself against the behemoth that was Metallica. You might chuckle at Manson's plight, thinking, poor guy, he's got it all, fame, fortune, and adoration, yet still, he can't shake off the shadow of his former band. Ah, but that's where our values come into play. You see, our perception of success or failure depends on how we define our goals and standards. For Manson, his yardstick was being more popular and successful than Metallica. It drove him to achieve greatness, yet ultimately became a double-edged sword, causing him anguish even in the midst of triumph. Now, let's fast forward to another tale of a musician who faced a similar predicament, albeit 2 decades earlier. In 1962, a young Liverpool band, known for their quirky names and hairstyles, was gaining momentum in the music scene. Among its members was a drummer who stood out, charming, charismatic, and already gracing the covers of magazines. He was the epitome of professionalism, eschewing partying and substance abuse in favor of a steady relationship. Some even thought he'd be the perfect face of the band, not the enigmatic John or the romantic Paul. But fate had other plans. Would you like to know more about this drummer's story and how it relates to our exploration of values and success? Let's dive back into the fascinating story of Pete Best, the drummer who was replaced by Ringo Starr in the early days of the Beatles. You might wonder, what happened to this talented musician? Why did he fall into depression and struggle with his life after being let go from the band? Well, it turns out that Best's journey wasn't exactly the typical tale of woe. In fact, he eventually found happiness and fulfillment in a way that eluded his former bandmates. In a remarkable interview in 1994, Best revealed that he traded in his fame and fortune for something far more valuable, a loving family, a stable marriage, and a simple life. Now, here's where things get really interesting. What if I told you that Pete Best's experience holds a profound lesson for all of us? It's a reminder that some values are better than others. Some lead to good problems that we can easily solve, while others create bad problems that haunt us forever. Take, for instance, the value of pleasure. Ah, who doesn't love a good time? But research shows that when we prioritize pleasure above everything else, we often end up anxious, emotionally unstable, and depressed. Think of it like chasing a high. It might feel great at first, but eventually, it wears off, leaving us feeling empty and unsatisfied. And yet, we're bombarded with messages telling us to pursue pleasure, to indulge in instant gratification. But here's the thing, pleasure is just a symptom of a deeper issue. If we focus on cultivating meaningful relationships, personal growth, and a sense of purpose, pleasure will follow naturally. Another value that gets us into trouble is material success. How many of us measure our self-worth by our bank account balance or our social media followers? Newsflash, once our basic needs are met, additional wealth doesn't bring much joy. In fact, research shows that the correlation between happiness and material success is virtually non-existent. We're left working ourselves to the bone for little more than a pat on the back. Meanwhile, we neglect values like honesty, kindness, and compassion, which truly matter in the long run. And then there's the value of always being right. Let's face it, we're all flawed human beings, prone to mistakes and biases. Trying to be infallible leads to stagnation, not growth. By assuming we don't know it all and embracing the unknown, we open ourselves up to new ideas and perspectives. This mindset allows us to learn from our errors and become better versions of ourselves. Lastly, let's talk about staying positive. Now, positivity is essential, but it shouldn't be the sole aim of our lives. Blindly focusing on positivity without confronting reality can lead to avoidance, denial, and missed opportunities for genuine growth. It's okay to acknowledge the tough stuff and work through it. So, what can we learn from Pete Best's story? Perhaps it's time to reevaluate our priorities. Maybe it's time to trade in our fleeting pleasures, our material possessions, and our need to be right for something more substantial, true relationships, personal growth, and a sense of purpose. After all, as Pete Best himself said, I'm happier than I would have been with the Beatles. Here's a rewritten version of the script, condensed to about 50% of the original content, with added retention hooks and a smooth narrative flow. Have you ever been told that staying positive is the key to happiness? Or that you're not allowed to express negative emotions? Newsflash, those ideas might sound great on paper, but they can do more harm than good. Think about it. When someone tells you that every cloud has a silver lining, or that you're ignorant and need to learn more, it's actually a clever way of saying you're not attached to any particular ideology or set of facts. This mindset encourages you to stay open-minded and curious, always seeking knowledge and growth. But what about those who claim to thrive on positivity? Oh, losing my job is an opportunity to explore my passions, or, my husband cheating on me taught me what I really mean to others. While there's some merit to finding the silver lining, let's be real, sometimes life is just plain tough. Denying negative emotions can lead to prolonged and intensified suffering, and avoiding them altogether isn't a solution to life's problems. Negative emotions are a normal part of life. Accidents happen, people disappoint us, and sometimes we just feel terrible. It's okay to acknowledge those feelings. In fact, expressing them in a healthy and constructive way is essential for emotional well-being. Take anger, for instance. Anger itself isn't the issue, it's how we act on it. Wanting to punch someone in the face. That's the problem, not the anger. We need to focus on addressing the root cause, not just suppressing our emotions. The problem with forcing positivity is that it denies the existence of our life's challenges. When we avoid our problems, we miss the opportunity to solve them and find true fulfillment. Problems give our lives meaning and significance. Think about it, running a marathon, raising a child, or starting a business from scratch might be stressful, but they bring a sense of accomplishment and purpose. Freud once said, "One day, in retrospect, the years of struggle will strike you as the most beautiful." He was right. Sometimes the toughest experiences become the most treasured memories. So, what does this mean for our values? Let's define good and bad values. Good values are reality-based, socially constructive, and immediately achievable. Honesty, innovation, and vulnerability are excellent examples. Bad values, on the other hand, are superstitious, destructive, and beyond our control. Popularity, wealth, and fame are often touted as desirable goals, but they're shallow and fleeting. Prioritize your values wisely. Ask yourself, what matters most to you? Is it being honest, creative, or kind? Once you identify your core values, you'll be better equipped to navigate life's challenges and find genuine happiness. Remember, good values are within your control, and they lead to a more authentic, meaningful existence. Let's talk about what truly matters in life. Think about it, would you rather have a good cannoli or a house in the Bahamas? Sounds simple, right? Well, the answer depends on what you value most. Your priorities dictate how you live your life, influencing every decision you make. Take Hiro Onoda, for instance. His top priority was unwavering loyalty to the Japanese Empire. Now, that value might sound admirable, but trust me, it led to some pretty rotten outcomes, like living off bugs and worms for 30 years. Not exactly the kind of life anyone would want to swap with him. Then there's Dave Mustaine, the famous musician who still felt like a failure despite achieving incredible fame. Why? Because he'd tied his self-worth to arbitrary comparisons with others. His value system was all wrong, leading to problems like needing to sell 150 million records just to feel satisfied. No wonder he wasn't happy. But what if I told you that someone who experienced similar struggles, Pete Best, managed to flip his script? After being kicked out of the Beatles, he learned to reevaluate what truly mattered to him and found happiness in the process. Fast forward to his later years, he's now a happy, healthy individual with a loving family. Go figure. Poor values lead us to focus on unimportant things that worsen our lives. But when we choose better values, we shift our energy towards what genuinely matters. This is the essence of self-improvement, prioritizing values that bring us joy, fulfillment, and success. Now, let's talk about the concept of giving a fuck. You see, when we direct our attention towards things that matter, we start solving meaningful problems. And when we tackle those problems, we experience a sense of empowerment. It's like running a marathon. If you voluntarily sign up for it, it becomes a triumphant achievement. However, if someone forces you to do it, it's a nightmare. Consider William James, a man plagued by severe health issues throughout his childhood. Yet, amidst these challenges, he discovered solace in art. Painting became his escape, his passion, and his strength. Unfortunately, others didn't share his enthusiasm, and his father even mocked him for his perceived lack of talent. Here's the thing, James's story teaches us that sometimes, it's not the circumstances themselves that define our lives, but how we respond to them. We're always making choices, whether consciously or unconsciously. So, ask yourself, what problems am I truly choosing to tackle, and which ones am I letting happen to me without my consent? As we explore these ideas further, remember that your values determine the quality of your life. By embracing the right values, you'll find yourself tackling meaningful challenges that bring you closer to your goals. In the next chapters, we'll dive into 5 unconventional yet life-changing values that can help you create a more fulfilling existence. These values include: taking full responsibility for everything in your life. Cultivating uncertainty and acknowledging your own ignorance. Embracing failure as a chance to learn and grow. Practicing rejection and setting clear boundaries. Contemplating mortality to keep your priorities in check. So, what kind of problems do you want to tackle today? Will you choose wisely, or let circumstances dictate your path? Let me tell you a story about a young man named William James, a member of a prominent family in America during the 19th century. As a child, he struggled to find his place among his siblings. His younger brother, Henry James, would go on to become a world-renowned novelist, and his sister, Alice James, made a good living as a writer too. Meanwhile, William was considered the family's black sheep. His father, a successful businessman, was determined to salvage his son's future. He used his connections to get William into Harvard Medical School, but despite his best efforts, William just didn't feel at home there. He felt like a fake and a fraud, unsure of himself and his abilities. A visit to a psychiatric facility only reinforced these feelings, leaving him wondering if he had more in common with the patients than the doctors. Feeling lost and uncertain, William dropped out of med school, much to his father's dismay. Instead, he joined an anthropological expedition to the Amazon rainforest, a perilous journey that tested his physical limits. He contracted smallpox and suffered debilitating back spasms, leaving him emaciated and unable to walk. Yet, against all odds, he managed to make it back to New England, where he was met with even greater disappointment from his father. By now, William was nearly 30, still jobless, and plagued by chronic pain. He tried his hand at medicine, failed, and now faced the daunting prospect of starting anew. Feeling hopeless, he began to contemplate ending his life. But one fateful night, while reading the philosopher Charles Peirce's lectures, he stumbled upon an idea that would change everything. He decided to conduct an experiment. For 1 year, he would take full responsibility for every aspect of his life, no matter what challenges lay ahead. He vowed to change his circumstances, even if it meant facing failure. If nothing improved, he would accept that he was indeed powerless, and his life would be over. Little did he know that this experiment would mark the beginning of a remarkable transformation. Fast forward, and William James became the father of American psychology, renowned for his philosophical and psychological contributions. His work was translated into countless languages, and he lectured across the United States and Europe. He married, raised 5 children, and inspired countless minds. He credited his experiment with being his rebirth, and it laid the foundation for his remarkable achievements. So, here's the takeaway: we're often faced with circumstances beyond our control, but we always control how we interpret them and respond. We're constantly making choices, whether we acknowledge it or not. It's easy to fall prey to the responsibility fault fallacy, blaming external factors for our lives. But the truth is, we're always responsible for our experiences, no matter what. Think about it: even if you're hit by a bus, it's still your responsibility to decide how you react. You choose the meaning you assign to the event and the values you uphold. We're always measuring our lives using some metric or another. Sometimes, the same event can be seen as either good or bad, depending on our perspective. The key is recognizing that we're always choosing, whether we realize it or not. We must give a damn about something. The question is, what are we choosing to care about? What values guide our decisions? Are they good values, or are we using flawed metrics to measure our lives? As I reflect on my own life, I've come to understand that true growth begins with embracing this fundamental principle: we're responsible for our lives, no matter what. So, let's ask ourselves, what are we choosing to prioritize? What values will we uphold, and what metrics will we use to navigate life's twists and turns? The answer lies within us, waiting to be discovered. Remember that wise phrase? With great power comes great responsibility. Sounds nice and authoritative, doesn't it? I'm pretty sure it's been uttered by Uncle Ben from the Spider-Man movies, but let's not dwell on the details. What's fascinating is how often we hear this quote, usually with a hint of irony and a dash of beer-induced bravado. It's one of those quotes that sounds intelligent, but ultimately tells us something we've known all along. But here's the thing: there's a more profound version of this quote. Just switch the nouns around: with great responsibility comes great power. Think about it: the more we choose to accept responsibility in our lives, the more power we'll exercise over our lives. Accepting responsibility for our problems is the first step to solving them. Let me share a story with you. A friend of mine used to complain about being too short, which he believed was the reason why women wouldn't date him. He was smart, funny, and looked great, but he was fixated on his height. He'd pick apart tiny behaviors from women that hinted at their supposed lack of interest, convincing himself that they weren't attracted to him, even if they were. His dating life was, well, let's just say it was a mess. He had chosen the value that was holding him back: his height. He thought women were attracted to height alone, and he was doomed, no matter what. This choice was disempowering. It created a crappy problem for him, one that was hard to escape. But he wasn't even aware he was choosing it. Now, many people struggle to take responsibility for their problems because they think it means taking the blame. They believe that accepting responsibility equals being at fault. Not necessarily. Responsibility and fault are different. If you hit someone with your car, you're both at fault and legally responsible to compensate them. But there are situations where you're not at fault, yet you're still responsible. Think about it: if you wake up to find a newborn baby on your doorstep, it's not your fault that the baby was left there. However, the baby becomes your responsibility. Whatever choice you make, whether to keep it, give it up, or ignore it, there'll be consequences, and you'll be responsible for those as well. In court, judges don't get to choose their cases. Yet, they're responsible for the outcome. They must choose the consequences and ensure the chosen metric is carried out. We're responsible for experiences that aren't our fault all the time. That's just life. To understand the difference between fault and responsibility, consider this: fault is in the past tense, while responsibility is in the present tense. Fault results from choices already made, whereas responsibility stems from the choices you're making right now, every second of every day. You're choosing to read this, thinking about these concepts, and deciding whether to accept or reject them. Maybe it's my fault that my ideas are lame, but you're responsible for coming to your own conclusions. So, the next time you point fingers at someone else for your situation, remember that nobody else is responsible for your unhappiness but you. Many people may contribute to your unhappiness, but you're the one who chooses how you see things, react to things, and value things. You always get to choose the metric by which you measure your experiences. Let's dive back into the story of a young man who found himself heartbroken after his girlfriend cheated on him with her teacher. He thought he'd been punched in the gut multiple times, feeling utterly devastated. But here's the thing, he was still holding on to the idea that she was solely responsible for his misery. He spent months trying to control her, calling, screaming, begging her to come back, showing up unannounced, and even resorting to other irrational behaviors. However, he soon came to realize that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't control her emotions or actions. This epiphany shifted his perspective, and he understood that while she was indeed to blame for hurting him, she wasn't responsible for his feelings. It was then that he took ownership of his emotions and decided to focus on improving himself. He started hitting the gym, reconnecting with old friends, and meeting new people. He even went on a study abroad trip and volunteered. Slowly but surely, he started to heal. Now, let's talk about the concept of taking responsibility for our problems. We're always quick to attribute success to external factors, fighting over who deserves the credit. But when it comes to failures or difficulties, we're often reluctant to acknowledge our role in creating them. We might even stop short of acknowledging the pain and discomfort associated with these situations. The truth is, taking responsibility for our problems is where the real growth happens. This young man's journey teaches us an essential lesson. When he finally accepted his part in enabling the unhealthy relationship, he opened the door to personal growth. By recognizing his shortcomings and taking responsibility, he gained valuable insights that ultimately led to healthier relationships. As I sit here, reflecting on the story of Malala Yousafzai, I'm reminded of a profound truth: our choices shape our experiences, even in the midst of unimaginable adversity. This remarkable young woman, who defied the Taliban's attempts to silence her, chose to fight for her right to education, even in the face of mortal danger. You might recall the story of a man who commented on my blog, accusing me of shallowness and superficiality. His pain was palpable, his grief raw, and I understood why he lashed out. Yet, as I pondered his words, I realized that even in his darkest moment, he had a choice. He could have let anger consume him, or he could have used that pain to fuel a new path forward. That's exactly what Malala did. Shot in the face, she could have given up. Instead, she chose to rise above the violence, using her experience to amplify her message and inspire others. Her resilience is a testament to the human spirit's capacity to transform suffering into strength. Now, let's shift gears to explore the concept of genetics and the hand we're dealt. Imagine 6 teenagers struggling with obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD. These individuals, like Imogen, Josh, and Jack, grapple with intrusive thoughts and compulsive behaviors that dominate their daily lives. Their OCD is a complex condition, influenced by genetics and neurology, yet manageability lies within their grasp. Psychiatrists involved in a groundbreaking study recognized that acceptance is key. They encouraged the teens to acknowledge the imperfections of their compulsions, rather than trying to suppress them. For instance, Imogen learned to accept that her family's safety wasn't entirely within her control, while Josh came to understand that striving for symmetry was undermining his well-being. Jack, meanwhile, accepted the reality of germs and the futility of trying to eradicate them completely. The ultimate goal was to empower these young individuals to reevaluate their values and recognize that their OCD-driven behaviors were, in fact, irrational. By acknowledging this, they could begin to choose alternative paths, ones that prioritized functionality and happiness over the suffocating grip of their OCD. It's fascinating to consider how this process mirrors our own struggles with pain, trauma, and adversity. When faced with challenges, we often feel overwhelmed, unsure of how to respond. However, it's precisely in those moments that we have a choice. We can let pain define us, or we can use it as an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to forge a new direction. So, as we navigate life's complexities, let's remember Malala's bravery and the OCD patient's courageous journeys. We all have a choice, to succumb to our struggles or to rise above them, transforming our experiences into stepping stones for growth and transformation. As we delve deeper into the world of obsessive-compulsive disorder, we're met with individuals like Josh, Imogen, and Jack, who found themselves trapped in a cycle of anxiety and fear. Their actions, driven by OCD's irrational values, are causing them to harm their ability to function in life. So, how do we break free from this vicious cycle? By encouraging these young individuals to prioritize values that matter more than their OCD-driven behaviors. For Josh, it's about having a normal social life, free from the burden of hiding his disorder. For Imogen, it's about regaining control over her thoughts and emotions. And for Jack, it's about conquering his debilitating phobias. Through intensive desensitization exercises, they begin to confront their fears head-on, facing panic attacks and emotional turmoil along the way. Yet, by the end of this journey, remarkable progress is evident. Imogen's no longer compulsively tapping surfaces, Josh is able to resist his OCD urges for extended periods, and Jack, who shows the most dramatic improvement, can enjoy meals in restaurants without succumbing to his obsessions. Now, let's talk about a crucial aspect of personal growth, responsibility. Many of us view challenges like OCD, small stature, or other disadvantages as fixed circumstances beyond our control. We think, I didn't choose my crappy genetics, so it's not my fault if things go wrong. While it's true, we didn't choose our circumstances, it's still our responsibility to take action. During my time playing poker, I gained a profound understanding of the importance of making choices, regardless of the hand we're dealt. Luck plays a role, but ultimately, the outcome depends on the decisions we make. Similarly, in life, we're dealt various cards, and while some people receive better hands than others, the real game lies in the choices we make with those cards. We often hear the phrase, "poor me," when someone's struggling with neurological or genetic deficiencies. But the truth is, it's not about blaming fate, it's about taking ownership of our lives. We inherit bad hands, but it's still our responsibility to navigate them. Whether we choose to seek help, undergo therapy, or opt for self-improvement, the decision is ours. Let's face it, life is a series of experiences that shape us, sometimes leaving us scarred. If we tally up the number of people affected by mental health disorders, abuse, neglect, or tragic events, we'd find that nearly everyone has faced adversity. It's not about comparing whose struggles are greater or lesser, it's about acknowledging our shared human experience. The tendency to shift responsibility onto others, known as victimhood chic, has become a societal norm. We share our stories online, seeking attention and sympathy, which creates a false sense of moral righteousness. However, this approach prevents us from taking genuine responsibility for our actions and choices. In the end, it's not about the cards we're dealt, it's about how we respond to them. As we strive to overcome our challenges, we must recognize that our lives are a game of choices, where the ultimate winners are those who make informed decisions, adapt to their circumstances, and persevere in the face of adversity. As we navigate the complex landscape of modern society, it's striking how easily we become embroiled in the game of victimhood chic. We're constantly bombarded with messages that amplify our perceived injustices, making us feel like we're the only ones who truly understand what it means to be wronged. This phenomenon has reached unprecedented heights, where every single demographic group feels victimized simultaneously, and we're all riding the high of moral indignation together. In this era of instant gratification, anyone can claim to be offended by just about anything, whether it's a book assignment in a university class, a Christmas tree ban at the local mall, or a minor tax hike on investment funds. Suddenly, we're convinced we're oppressed and deserving of attention. The media, eager to capitalize on this trend, exploits our outrage for ratings and profit. They've coined the term outrage porn to describe this tactic, where instead of reporting on real issues, they manufacture controversy to stir up public opinion. This manufactured outrage creates a vicious cycle of polarization, distracting us from genuine problems that affect our communities. It's no surprise that we're more divided than ever before. However, the real issue with victimhood chic lies in its ability to divert attention away from actual victims. It's like the classic tale of the boy who cried wolf: the more people cry victim over trivial matters, the less we notice those who genuinely suffer. We become numb to the cries for help, unable to distinguish between legitimate grievances and fabricated ones. Feeling offended has become a habit, providing a sense of self-righteousness and moral superiority. As cartoonist Tim Kreider astutely observed, outrage is like other vices that feel good but eventually devour us from the inside out. And it's even more insidious than most because we don't even realize it's a pleasure. Living in a democratic society requires embracing differing opinions and perspectives, which comes with its own set of challenges. Yet, increasingly, people seem to forget that this is the price we pay for freedom. We must learn to empathize with those we disagree with, approach the news with a critical eye, and prioritize honesty, transparency, and doubt over being right, feeling good, or seeking revenge. So, let's ask ourselves, are we ready to take responsibility for our actions and attitudes? Can we muster the courage to challenge our assumptions and adapt to a rapidly changing world? Now, some of you might be thinking, okay, I get it, I'm guilty of being entitled and selfish, but how do I change? Well, here's the truth, it starts with making different choices. Every day, you choose what to care about, so why not shift your focus towards something more meaningful? It's as simple as deciding to give a damn about something else. Of course, this isn't easy. You'll likely feel like a failure, uncertain, and rejected along the way. You might question whether you're doing the right thing. But, my friend, these feelings are normal. They're a sign that you're growing, learning, and challenging yourself. As we explore the next chapter, let's delve into the idea that we're all wrong about everything, including myself. 500 years ago, cartographers thought California was an island, doctors believed bleeding patients would cure their ailments. The list goes on. We've made mistakes, learned from them, and adapted. It's time to apply this same principle to our personal lives. Let's dive into the fascinating world of being utterly, completely, and totally wrong, and loving every minute of it. 500 years ago, people thought California was an island, doctors believed bleeding could cure diseases, and scientists thought fire was made of phlogiston. Meanwhile, women applied dog urine to their faces thinking it was an anti-aging miracle, and astronomers thought the sun revolved around the earth. Sound familiar? Yeah, I've been there too, in many ways. As a kid, I thought mediocre was a tasty vegetable I didn't enjoy eating. I believe my brother discovered a secret passageway in my grandma's house because he could exit through a window without leaving the bathroom. Who knew windows were so magical? I also thought visiting Washington, B.C. meant traveling back in time to the dinosaur era, because, well, B.C. sounds ancient, right? As a teenager, I claimed I didn't care about anything, but deep down, I cared way too much. Others dictated my world without me even realizing it. Happiness was seen as a predetermined fate, not a deliberate choice. Love was something that just happened, not something you worked towards. Being cool seemed like a skill you learned from others, not something you created for yourself. My first serious relationship ended, and I thought I'd never love another woman the same way. But then I met someone else, and suddenly love wasn't enough. It wasn't until I realized that everyone gets to define what enough means to them that I understood love can be whatever we choose to make it. I've been flat out wrong about myself, others, society, culture, the world, and the universe, throughout my entire life. And I'm proud of it. As present Mark looks back on past Mark's mistakes, future Mark will do the same, noticing similar flaws. That's growth. Michael Jordan once said that failing repeatedly led to his success. Similarly, I'm constantly wrong about everything, which leads to improvements in my life. Growth is an ongoing process, where we move from wrong to slightly less wrong, then to even less wrong than that. We approach truth and perfection without ever quite reaching them. The goal isn't finding the ultimate right answer, it's chipping away at our current wrongness, making progress toward being less wrong tomorrow. Personal growth can be surprisingly scientific. If you think about it, our values are hypotheses, actions are experiments, and emotions/thought patterns are data. There's no one-size-fits-all dogma or perfect ideology. Your experience shows you what feels right for you, even that might be somewhat wrong too. Everyone's unique experiences lead to different conclusions about life and its meaning. My right answer used to involve solo travel and laughter at my farts. Now, who knows? Maybe that'll change again as I grow and learn. People often become fixated on being right about their life, missing out on actual living. A woman stays home, hesitant to put herself out there, fearing confronting her doubts about her desirability. A man works hard, convinced he deserves a promotion, but hesitates to ask, worried about facing his self-doubts about his skills. These certainties, about being undesirable or unappreciated, provide short-term comfort at the expense of potential long-term happiness and success. Certainty is the enemy of growth. Nothing is set in stone until it happens, and even then, it's debatable. To grow, we need to accept the imperfections of our values and question our own beliefs. So, instead of seeking certainty, strive for doubt about your thoughts, feelings, and the future. Embracing uncertainty allows us to explore, learn, and adapt, paving the way for true growth. Imagine you're in a room with a mysterious setup, a series of buttons to push, with no clear instructions on what you need to do to succeed. Your task: figure out the sequence of actions that will trigger a light to turn on, indicating you've earned a point. Sounds simple enough. But here's the thing, there's no hidden code, no secret formula. The points are entirely random. As psychologists have shown, most people in this situation will start by randomly pressing buttons, hoping to stumble upon the correct sequence. When the light does turn on, they'll analyze their actions, trying to identify the exact steps that led to success. But the truth is, the outcome is just a random event. Yet, despite this, everyone leaves the room convinced they've cracked the code, proud of their unique discovery. This thought-provoking exercise reveals an essential aspect of human nature: our brains are wired to create meaning where none exists. We make associations between seemingly unrelated elements, generating a web of interpretations that shape our reality. For instance, we notice a chair is gray and immediately connect the color to the object, forming the meaning that the chair is indeed gray. However, our brains aren't perfect. We're prone to mistakes, misconceptions, and biases. We cling to the meanings we create, even when faced with contradictory evidence. As Emo Phillips quipped, "I used to think the human brain was the most wonderful organ in my body. Then I realized who was telling me this." In other words, our perception of the world is filtered through our own subjective lens. This phenomenon speaks to the intricate dance between our perceptions, experiences, and the meanings we assign to them. Our minds are masterful at conjuring explanations for the world around us, even when the truth lies elsewhere. By acknowledging this fundamental aspect of human cognition, we can begin to question our assumptions, challenge our certainties, and cultivate a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world we inhabit. In fact, embracing uncertainty is a powerful catalyst for personal growth. Instead of seeking absolute certainty, we should strive to maintain a healthy dose of skepticism, doubting our own convictions, questioning our emotions, and remaining open to the complexities of life. After all, it's precisely this openness that allows us to evolve, adapt, and transform. By recognizing the imperfections of our perception and the malleability of our meanings, we can embark on a journey of self-discovery, navigating the ever-shifting landscape of our experiences with greater awareness and curiosity. So, the next time you find yourself caught up in a pursuit of certainty, remember that the only fixed truth is that everything is uncertain. The rest is up to interpretation, and that's where the magic begins. Have you ever stopped to consider that almost everything we know and believe might be built on shaky ground? Comedian Emo Phillips once quipped, "I used to think the human brain was the most wonderful organ in my body. Then I realized who was telling me this." In reality, much of what we hold dear is shaped by the inherent flaws and biases within our minds. Our values, in particular, are often formed from experiences that don't accurately represent the world at large or are rooted in misconceptions about the past. This means that most of our beliefs are, quite literally, wrong, or, to be kinder, some are simply less wrong than others. Our brains are wired to create a jumbled narrative, making it essential to acknowledge this truth. After all, understanding this concept will become crucial as we delve deeper. A striking example of the fallibility of our perceptions comes from the story of journalist Meredith Marin. In 1988, during therapy, she made a shocking discovery: her father had allegedly abused her as a child. This revelation shook her entire family, leading to a bitter divide between those who believed her and those who didn't. However, in 1996, Meredith came to a stunning realization: she'd fabricated the memory with the help of a well-meaning therapist. Her case was hardly unique. Many women during the 1980s accused family members of abuse, only to recant years later. Similarly, claims of satanic cults abusing children gained traction, but subsequent police investigations found no evidence to support these allegations. Why did people start inventing memories of abuse during this period? Let's play a familiar game to illustrate how our memories can morph: the telephone game. We share a story, and each person adds their own spin, resulting in a vastly different tale by the final recipient. Our memories work similarly: we recall an event, modify it over time, and embellish it when sharing it with others. These altered versions eventually become ingrained in our minds, making it challenging to distinguish fact from fiction. Consider the case of Meredith again. As a radical feminist in the 1980s, she immersed herself in stories of child abuse and worked closely with survivors. She even wrote about flawed studies that exaggerated the prevalence of child molestation. When she confronted her father with accusations, her existing biases and preconceived notions influenced her perception of the situation. Our brains function in a perpetually biased manner, always seeking to fit new information into our existing framework of values and conclusions. When we have a close relationship with someone, our memories of them tend to be rosy, but as tensions rise, our recollections can take a darker turn. We unconsciously alter facts to justify our emotions, creating a self-serving narrative. Meredith's fabricated memory becomes clearer when viewed through this lens. With a strained relationship with her father and a history of troubled relationships with men, her values were already skewed towards doubting male intimacy. As she delved into the world of child abuse, her existing biases led her down a path where she created a false narrative about her childhood. As we navigate the complexities of our own perceptions, it's essential to recognize the role of bias in shaping our beliefs. By acknowledging the imperfections in our thinking, we can begin to separate fact from fiction, and cultivate a more nuanced understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Let's dive back into the fascinating story of Meredith, whose life was a perfect storm of emotional turmoil, misinformation, and the quest for answers. As she delved deeper into the world of incest and child molestation, she found herself entangled in a web of misconceptions. The infamous study suggesting that nearly a third of adult women had been sexually abused as children turned out to be grossly exaggerated. Can you imagine how easily we can be swayed by statistics and sensationalized headlines? Meredith's personal life was a mess. She'd fallen deeply in love with a woman who shared a similar traumatic past, and their relationship quickly spiraled into codependency and toxicity. Meredith's partner used her experiences as a tool to manipulate Meredith, while her strained relationship with her father continued to deteriorate. To cope, Meredith sought solace in therapy, where she was repeatedly told that her unhappiness was rooted in something deeper, not just her high-stress job or troubled relationships. During this tumultuous period, repressed memory therapy gained popularity, promising to uncover hidden traumas through hypnotic trance states. The idea was that clients would tap into their subconscious, reliving forgotten memories, both good and bad. What could go wrong? Fast forward to today, and we're left with the sobering reality that many people were falsely accused and imprisoned due to fabricated memories. It's a chilling reminder that our brains are wired to seek coherence between past and present, sometimes resorting to inventing false memories to make sense of our experiences. Meredith's story is not an isolated incident. In the 1980s and 90s, hundreds of innocent individuals faced wrongful accusations, leading to devastating consequences. When people felt trapped in unfulfilling lives, they latched onto explanations that promised validation and redemption, a ticket to being a victim and avoiding accountability. Repressed memory therapy provided a platform for these unconscious desires to surface, masquerading as tangible memories. The phenomenon became known as false memory syndrome, forcing courts to rethink their approaches and therapists to reevaluate their practices. Research has since reinforced the lesson that our perceptions are fluid, and our recollections are surprisingly unreliable. You've probably heard those reassuring phrases, trust yourself, listen to your gut, but what if the answer lies in trusting ourselves less? If our minds are prone to manipulation and bias, shouldn't we cultivate skepticism and rigorously challenge our assumptions? Sounds daunting, right? But paradoxically, this approach offers liberation and safety. Now, let's shift gears and explore the tale of Erin, a determined individual who believes she can conquer death. She shows up at a sushi restaurant, armed with a bottle of sake and a conviction that she needs your help, specifically, your romantic involvement. To achieve this feat, her fiancé joins the conversation, eager to demonstrate that she's willing to share you and wants your partner to feel comfortable. We first met Erin at a self-help seminar in 2008. She was a lawyer, intelligent and charming, but also open to unconventional ideas. Our encounter led to a whirlwind romance, culminating in her asking me to relocate across the country to be with her. Little did I know that our connection would become a catalyst for a series of events that would test the limits of trust, loyalty, and the human psyche. As I sat in that cozy sushi restaurant, sipping on sake alongside Erin, I couldn't help but think about our tumultuous relationship. It's funny how we met. I was drawn to her intelligence, her quick wit, and her beauty. She'd laugh at my jokes, and let's just say I'd try to impress her. Fast forward a month, and she invites me to leave behind everything I know and love to start anew with her in California. Red flags started waving in my mind, but I tried to brush them off. After all, who wouldn't want to start fresh with someone as captivating as Erin? That is, until she dropped the bombshell: if I didn't commit to being with her, she'd harm herself. 2 red flags waved loudly now. But little did I know, this was only the tip of the iceberg. Years earlier, Erin had been involved in a near-death experience after a car accident. Miraculously, she'd come back, claiming that her perspective on life had shifted dramatically. She'd become fascinated with spirituality, energy healing, and the supernatural. Our connection was more than just chemistry. We were meant to change the world together, curing death and bringing about a new era of peace. That's when the madness began. Despite blocking her from my digital life, she created multiple email addresses, flooding me with angry messages daily. Fake social media profiles, a replica of my website, you name it. She'd accuse me of lying and cheating, claiming I'd promised to marry her and that we were destined to be together. I asked her to take down the website, and she'd only agree if I flew to California to join her. Yeah, that was her idea of a compromise. Throughout this ordeal, her reasoning remained steadfast: we were meant to be, ordained by God Himself. Angels whispered in her ear, guiding us towards a brighter future. Yes, she genuinely believed that. And through it all, her conviction never wavered. It hit me like a ton of bricks: Erin is a self-improvement enthusiast. She spends a small fortune on seminars, books, and courses, convinced that she's the epitome of positivity and resilience. Yet, her actions scream otherwise. She embodies the very principles she preaches, yet those principles don't translate to empathy or understanding. Here's the kicker: despite her questionable morals, she's got it all figured out. She's a masterclass in persistence and visualization. Her confidence borders on arrogance, much like a cult leader. She genuinely believes she can cure cats like Jesus healed Lazarus. But amidst all this supposed awesomeness, her values remain warped. Certainty is a powerful thing, isn't it? It's what drives Erin to pursue me, no matter the cost. Even when confronted with the fact that her obsession is irrational and toxic, she can't shake it off. It's as if her conviction is an anchor that keeps her grounded. Now, I'm not one for armchair psychology, but I recall reading about psychologist Roy Baumeister's research on evil. He discovered that people who commit terrible acts often feel great about themselves. Their confidence breeds a sense of entitlement, which justifies harming others. It's a twisted cycle, where the perpetrators are convinced of their righteousness, while everyone else is seen as flawed. Take, for instance, racists who perpetuate hate crimes or terrorists who believe they're martyrs. These folks aren't consumed by self-doubt, instead, they're fueled by a rock-solid faith in their own ideologies. Stanley Milgram's infamous experiments highlighted how easily ordinary people can be swayed into committing cruel acts when given a convincing narrative. Participants punished volunteers without hesitation, reveling in the moral high ground. Certainty breeds a false sense of security, leading people to overlook the harm they cause. We chase certainty everywhere, in our careers, relationships, and even social media. We yearn for reassurance, for validation that we're on the right path. But the pursuit of certainty often leads to increased insecurity. We compare ourselves to others, questioning our worthiness and relevance. It's easy to get caught up in the drama of Aaron's situation, but what's striking is how eerily similar it is to the human condition. People crave certainty, and when it's absent, we seek it out in all the wrong places. We justify our actions, no matter how hurtful or destructive they may be, by telling ourselves we're doing what's right. In the end, it's not about being right or wrong, it's about recognizing the danger of blind certainty. We need to question our assumptions, confront our insecurities, and acknowledge the gray areas in between black and white. Anything less leaves us vulnerable to the pitfalls of ego and entitlement. Have you ever caught yourself constantly checking social media to see what others are saying about you, or obsessing over whether your partner is hiding something from you? Or perhaps you found yourself questioning your colleagues' intentions after missing out on a promotion, leading to a web of distrust and self-doubt? We're wired to crave certainty, to know exactly where we stand and what others think of us. But this insatiable need for reassurance can lead us down a slippery slope of entitlement, where we justify cheating, punishing others, and taking what we want, sometimes violently. As the old saying goes, the more you try to be certain, the more uncertain and insecure you'll feel. And conversely, embracing uncertainty can actually make us more comfortable in our unknowns. When we're uncertain, we're less likely to judge others based on stereotypes and biases. We let go of our self-judgments too, releasing our fears about being lovable, attractive, or successful. By staying open to learning and growing, we invite new experiences to shape our understanding of ourselves and the world. Uncertainty is the foundation of progress and growth. As the wise saying suggests, the man who thinks he knows everything learns nothing. To truly learn, we must first acknowledge what we don't know. By admitting our limitations, we unlock new opportunities for discovery. Our values, though well-intentioned, are often incomplete and flawed. Assuming they're perfect and infallible puts us in a rigid mindset that breeds entitlement and shirks accountability. To overcome problems, we must confront the possibility that our actions and beliefs might be misguided. This willingness to be wrong is essential for genuine transformation. To transform our values, we must first become uncertain about our existing ones. We must peel back the layers of our assumptions, exposing their flaws and biases, and confront our own ignorance. Only by facing our limitations can we begin to redefine what matters most. Now, consider Manson's law of avoidance: the more something threatens your identity, the more you'll avoid it. Think about it, when faced with challenges that disrupt our sense of self, we tend to shy away from them. It's not just the big stuff, success, failure, or changing our values, but also the everyday choices that shake up our comfort zones. Want to write that novel? That might force you to reevaluate your identity as a practical person. Want to talk to your partner about spicing up your relationship? That could challenge your notion of being a good partner. My friend, who dreamed of being a professional artist, spent years talking about sharing his work online, but never took the leap. Why? Becoming an artist nobody likes was far scarier than being one nobody's heard of. Comfortable with being under the radar, he stuck with what he knew. Similarly, my friend who lived a party lifestyle, despite feeling unfulfilled, couldn't bring himself to change. Afraid of losing the image of himself as a carefree bachelor, he clung to his familiar, albeit toxic, habits. So, the next time you're tempted to cling to your comfort zone, remember Manson's law: the more something threatens your identity, the more you'll avoid it. Will you dare to confront the unknown and risk reshaping your identity, or will you stay stuck in the familiarity of uncertainty? Imagine meeting someone who's living a life you once knew intimately. A life of parties, of excess, of always chasing the next thrill. This person had a tough time giving up their party lifestyle, despite the toll it took on their health and well-being. They'd speak with envy towards those of us who had settled down, yet they never made any real changes. They were stuck in their role as the party guy. Giving up that persona felt like a form of psychological self-destruction. Our brains are wired to protect our values, our identities. We try to live up to them, justify them, and maintain them. If we believe we're a nice guy, we'll avoid situations that challenge that notion. If we think we're an awesome cook, we'll seek out opportunities to prove it. But what if we're holding? Now, let's take a closer look at the importance of acknowledging that asking ourselves if we're wrong doesn't necessarily mean we are. For instance, if someone's partner is abusive and asks themselves if they're wrong to think that, well, sometimes they're absolutely right. The goal is to ask the question and explore the possibility, not to beat ourselves up over it. It's crucial to remember that for any real change to occur in our lives, we must be willing to confront our own wrong assumptions. If we're stuck in misery day after day, it means we're already wrong about something significant. Until we learn to question ourselves and uncover those blind spots, nothing will shift. So, let's move on to another essential question: what would it mean if I were wrong? Many people can ask themselves if they're wrong, but few are brave enough to face what it would imply. Admitting the possibility of being wrong can be painful, forcing us to reevaluate our core values and consider alternative perspectives. Aristotle wisely noted that it's the hallmark of an educated mind to entertain a thought without automatically accepting it. In the context of my friend's brother, his question to himself should be, what would it mean if I were wrong about my sister's engagement? The answer might be straightforward: he'd be a selfish, insecure, or narcissistic individual. His assumption that he knows what's best for his sister and that she can't make decisions for herself reveals underlying insecurities and skewed values. Confronting these entitlement issues can be difficult, and it's even harder to admit them. However, questioning our thoughts and behaviors is essential in resolving the root problems driving our questionable actions. Let's examine another crucial question: would being wrong lead to a better or worse situation for both myself and others? This litmus test helps us determine whether we possess solid values or if we're just neurotically taking our frustrations out on everyone around us, including ourselves. My friend's brother needs to decide between two options. Option A: continuing to cause drama and friction within the family, damaging the trust and respect he has with his sister, solely because he thinks she's making a mistake. This route requires little effort, no second-guessing, and no tolerance for others' decisions we dislike. Or option B: trusting his sister's ability to make her own decisions, remaining humble, and living with the consequences out of love and respect for her. This choice demands courage, humility, and a willingness to grow beyond our insecurities and biases. Unfortunately, most people opt for the easier route, which creates the most misery for everyone involved. My friend's brother chose option A, entering an imaginary battle with himself. He genuinely believes he's protecting his sister, but as we've seen, our convictions are often arbitrary and created after the fact to justify our preconceived notions. By choosing option A, he'd rather jeopardize his relationship with his sister than confront the possibility that he might be mistaken, a chance that could help him overcome his insecurities and flaws. One of my personal guiding principles is this: when faced with a choice between being screw-ups or everyone else being screw-ups, it's usually me who's the one messing up. I've learned this the hard way, having acted out based on my insecurities and flawed certainties numerous times. It's not a pretty picture. Of course, There are instances where others are indeed screw-ups, and there are moments when you'll be right. Reality dictates that if it feels like it's you against the world, chances are, you're the one who's messed up. Have you ever felt like the whole world is against you? Like you're the only one who's struggling to make ends meet? Well, here's a little secret: if it feels like you versus the world, chances are it's really just you versus yourself. I know I've been there. I graduated college in 2007, just as the financial collapse and Great Recession hit. Job prospects were scarce, and I ended up moving into a roommate's apartment, only to discover she hadn't paid rent for 3 months. Talk about a wake-up call. I spent the next 6 months living on a friend's couch, piecing together odd jobs, and wondering how I'd ever make it. But being a failure from the start turned out to be a blessing in disguise. It made me realize that failure is a relative concept. What matters isn't the outcome, it's the journey. I learned that even if I didn't succeed in my early 20s, I'd still be ahead of the game compared to where I'd be if I'd stuck with a traditional 9-to-5 job. Growing up in a wealthy family, I thought I knew what success looked like, but the truth was, my parents' wealth created a facade of happiness. We avoided problems, not solved them. This taught me that making money wasn't the ultimate goal, freedom and autonomy were what truly mattered. As I pondered my future, I asked myself a question that changed everything: would I rather make decent money doing something I hate or take a chance on pursuing my passion, even if it meant being broke? For me, the answer was clear: the latter. I realized that failing at something I loved wouldn't define me, it would merely delay my progress. Think about it. When Pablo Picasso drew on a napkin in a Spanish cafe, a woman offered him $20,000 for it. 2 minutes of doodling. No way. She didn't see the years, decades, of practice, experimentation, and failure that led to that napkin. Improvement requires countless small failures, and success depends on how many times we've tried and learned from our mistakes. We're conditioned to avoid failure, thanks to our education system, overbearing parents, and the curated highlight reels of social media. But what if I told you that failure is not something to be feared, but celebrated? Every great achievement is built on the backs of countless attempts, setbacks, and rejections. The key is to stop seeing failure as a destination and start viewing it as a stepping stone. Ask yourself, what would you rather have, a comfortable, predictable life or the freedom to pursue your dreams, even if they lead to uncertainty? For me, the choice was clear. And if you're willing to take the leap, remember that failure is not the opposite of success, it's a part of the journey itself. As Picasso so wisely said, it took me over 60 years to draw this. Don't be discouraged by the process, be inspired by the potential. Imagine reaching a point in your life where fear of failure becomes a constant companion, holding you back from taking risks and living fully. You're so afraid of falling short that you only play it safe, sticking to what's familiar and comfortable. But, paradoxically, it's precisely this reluctance to fail that prevents you from truly succeeding. When we're too scared to take the leap, we're stuck in neutral, unable to move forward. One major source of this fear is our choice of values, the yardsticks we use to measure ourselves. Think about it: if your primary goal is, make everyone like me, you'll be perpetually anxious, because your worth is tied to the whims of others. Your self-esteem is hostage to the opinions of others, leaving you vulnerable to criticism and rejection. But what if, instead, you adopted the value of improving my relationships? Suddenly, your focus shifts from external validation to internal growth. You start measuring your worth by the quality of your interactions, rather than by the number of likes or followers. Your self-worth becomes a reflection of your actions, not someone else's opinion. Now, let's talk about the kind of values that lead to true fulfillment. Research shows that process-oriented values, such as expressing myself honestly or cultivating creativity, are far more effective at generating happiness than fixed, outcome-based goals. Why? Because these values are continuous, not static. Every new conversation, every new relationship, presents fresh opportunities to practice honesty or creativity. The journey itself becomes the destination. Take Picasso, for instance. His artistic innovation continued well into old age because his underlying value was simple yet profound, honest expression. He wasn't driven by fame or wealth, he was compelled by the desire to create. As a result, his work remained vibrant and relevant, even in his twilight years. Consider this: if your ultimate goal is, buy a big house and a fancy car, what happens when you finally achieve it? The emptiness sets in, and suddenly, life feels meaningless. Midlife crises become inevitable, because the driving force behind your efforts has vanished. Growth and learning, however, are essential for lasting happiness. Conventional goals might provide temporary boosts, but they're inherently limiting. Kazimierz Dabrowski, a Polish psychologist, discovered that World War II survivors who'd faced unimaginable trauma often emerged stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. They realized that their hardships had taught them valuable lessons, and their lives became richer as a result. Similarly, cancer survivors and military personnel often report gaining newfound strength and resilience through their experiences. So, here's the thing: fear, anxiety, and sadness aren't always obstacles to progress, they can be catalysts for growth. By acknowledging and working through our pain, we build emotional resilience, increase empathy, and cultivate a deeper understanding of ourselves. Sometimes, it takes hitting rock bottom to realize the need for change. Weathering life's storms can be brutal, but it's also a chance to reassess our values and forge a new path. Will you choose to ride out the storm and emerge stronger, or will you stay stuck in neutral? Have you ever found yourself staring blankly at a situation, wondering how others seem to navigate it with ease, while you're left scratching your head, unsure of what to do next? Maybe you've been weathering the shitstorm, as I like to call it, that moment when everything you thought was true, normal, and good turns out to be the opposite. Perhaps you're coming out of a significant challenge and feeling bewildered, unsure of which direction to take. That's okay, it's a natural part of growth. Pain is an essential part of the process. If you're too busy chasing highs to confront your pain, you'll never muster the courage to make real changes. I remember when I was younger, I'd get a new gadget, and my instinctive response was to explore every feature, every button, every chord. I wanted to understand how it all worked. As I grew older, I realized that many of us have areas in our lives where we freeze, unsure of what to do next. We watch others succeed, and wonder, but how? I receive emails from people asking questions like this all the time. There's the medical student who wants to drop out, yet feels stuck, unable to take the leap. The college guy who's smitten with his tutor, but paralyzed by fear of rejection. The single mom who wants her adult children to move out, but fears hurting them. These are VCR questions, seemingly simple problems with complicated solutions. From the outside, the answers appear straightforward: just shut up and do it. But from within, these questions feel like existential riddles wrapped in puzzles. The issue is pain. Breaking news to loved ones or risking rejection can be daunting tasks. Feeling overwhelmed by uncertainty makes it harder still. I struggled with social anxiety in my youth. I'd distract myself with video games or numb myself with substances. I believed that speaking to strangers was impossible, especially if they were attractive or popular. My emotions defined my reality, making me think people didn't want to talk to me. But that wasn't true. The problem is, we often let our feelings dictate our actions. We fail to separate what we feel from what actually is. Many people try to numb out their pain rather than face it. They seek quick fixes or avoidant behaviors to return to a sense of comfort. Here's the thing: learn to sustain the pain you've chosen. When you adopt new values, you introduce new forms of pain into your life. Savor it. Welcome it. Act despite it. This will feel impossibly hard at first, but it's a crucial step towards growth. Life is about not knowing and taking action anyway. You don't need to have all the answers. Even when you think you do, you probably don't. What's there to lose? Take that first step, and then another, and another. Life is a series of unknowns, and the only way to navigate it is by doing something, no matter how uncertain you feel. You've probably experienced it at some point in your life, that nagging feeling of uncertainty, the weight of responsibility, and the fear of the unknown. You're not alone. All of life is like this, even when things are going great. Think about it, even when you're on top of the world, even when you're making money hand over fist, even when you're living the dream, you're still figuring out what's next. Don't ever forget that. And don't let fear hold you back from taking the leap. Let me take you back to my journey. In 2008, I made the bold decision to leave my day job behind and pursue an online business. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but I knew one thing: I didn't want to be miserable. And so, I started a blog about my crazy dating life. Sounds silly now, but trust me, it was a wild ride. Fast forward to the first morning I woke up as my own boss. Panic set in. I was responsible for my own decisions, my own failures, and my own successes. The pressure was on. I felt overwhelmed by the sheer amount of responsibilities piling up: web design, internet marketing, search engine optimization, the list went on. What did I do? I procrastinated. Big time. I downloaded some computer games and avoided the task at hand. Not exactly the best way to kickstart a business. But then something clicked. A phrase from my old math teacher, Mr. Packwood, echoed in my mind: if you're stuck on a problem, don't just sit there thinking about it, start working on it. Those words became my mantra during those tough times. I applied them, and slowly but surely, the fog lifted. I started taking action, even when I felt lost. And here's the amazing part: the answers started showing up. It wasn't always pretty, but it was progress. Here's what I learned: action isn't just the result of motivation, it's also its cause. Most people wait for that spark of motivation to hit before taking action. They assume it's a linear process: inspiration sparks motivation, which leads to action. But what if I told you that's not how it works? That the cycle goes round and round? Inspiration, motivation, action, inspiration, motivation, action. Think about it. Your actions create new emotions, new ideas, and new motivations. By taking action, you set off a chain reaction that propels you forward. So why wait for that elusive motivation? Take action instead. This, my friend, is the do something principle. It's a game changer. When you lack the motivation to tackle a challenge, don't freeze. Just do something. Anything. Then harness the energy from that action to fuel your next step. This approach helped me build my business, and it can help you achieve your goals too. Now, let me share another story that illustrates this concept beautifully. A novelist wrote over 70 novels, and when asked how he managed to stay inspired and motivated, he said, 200 crappy words per day, that's it. He forced himself to write something, anything, every day. More often than not, the act of writing sparked creativity and motivation. Before he knew it, he'd have a novel finished. So, what does this mean for you? It means that failure is just a stepping stone. When we focus on taking action rather than achieving perfection, we become unstoppable. We see every result as progress, not a reflection of our worth. We become fearless, and that fearlessness propels us forward. Imagine being lost in a storm, with every aspect of your life feeling empty and meaningless. You've tried measuring yourself by external standards, but they're no longer cutting it. Maybe you've been chasing false dreams, or maybe you just need a different yardstick to gauge your progress. Whatever the case, here's the simplest, yet most powerful truth. Do something. It doesn't matter what something is, it can be tiny, almost imperceptible. What matters is that it's a step towards something new. Recognize that you've been a bit self-centered in your relationships and want to cultivate empathy. Start small. Listen to someone who needs help and offer your support. Just once. Or, vow to acknowledge your role in your problems whenever you get upset. Give it a shot and see how it feels. That's usually all it takes to get the momentum going, to spark motivation to keep pushing forward. Action is always within your grasp. And when success is measured solely by taking action, even failures propel you forward. Let's talk about saying no. In 2009, I embarked on a journey that would take me to over 55 countries, leaving behind my possessions, apartment, and a modest online income. Sounds thrilling, right? I was chasing the digital nomad dream, seeking new cultures, and building my business. But beneath the surface, a subtle current of shame was propelling me forward. A mix of adventurous spirit and entitlement drove me to explore the world, but also led me to a life of constant dissatisfaction. As I reflect on those years, I realize that the freedom to roam wasn't fulfilling in and of itself. In fact, it was a recipe for emptiness. Freedom offers the chance for deeper meaning, but it's a hollow prize without direction. The key to finding true purpose lies in embracing constraints, choosing commitment over alternatives, focusing on one place, one belief, or one person. My travels taught me this hard lesson gradually, as I flitted from one destination to the next. Each new experience was exhilarating, yet fleeting. Meanwhile, my friends back home were building stable lives, forming lasting connections, and contributing to their communities. I, on the other hand, felt unmoored, drifting from one high to the next. Take, for instance, my trip to St. Petersburg, Russia in 2011. The weather was miserable, the food was terrible, and the people, well, let's just say they weren't exactly warm and fuzzy. Yet, amidst all the chaos, I discovered a refreshing honesty in the Russian culture. They didn't sugarcoat things, they called it as it was. If something was stupid, they said it was stupid. If someone was being a jerk, they told him he was being a jerk. I wonder if we, as Americans, might learn from this straightforwardness. Would our lives be richer if we stopped pretending and started speaking our minds? Perhaps. One thing's for sure, sometimes it takes hitting rock bottom to appreciate the beauty in simplicity. Have you ever noticed how often we sugarcoat things in the name of politeness? Tell someone you're having a great time, even if you're not entirely feeling it. Be friendly to someone you've just met, even if you don't particularly connect. It's almost as if we're conditioned to prioritize being liked over being real. When I first arrived in Russia, I found this approach refreshing. Or rather, shocking. On a coffee date with a lovely young woman, she blurted out that my initial comment was stupid, without any malice, just matter-of-factly. I was taken aback, expecting a gentle rebuke or a polite brush-off. Instead, she spoke her mind, as if the truth was the most natural thing in the world. It took me a while to adjust to this directness, but as I settled into Russian culture, I began to appreciate the unvarnished honesty. People weren't afraid to express themselves, flaws and all. No hidden agendas, no pretenses, just straightforward communication. It was liberating, in a strange way. Like sipping the finest vodka I'd ever tasted, it was intoxicating. Travel has a way of shaking off our deeply ingrained cultural norms and revealing that other societies operate on different principles. Russia showed me that living with different values doesn't mean you're less functional or miserable. In fact, this exposure made me question the artificial niceties that dominate Anglo culture. Are we trading genuine connections for shallow relationships? Is our aversion to rejection making us more anxious and less intimate? My Russian teacher shared an insightful perspective. Under communism, trust was the most valuable currency. To build trust, Russians learned to be brutally honest, sharing their dissatisfaction openly. This was essential for survival, knowing who you could count on and who you couldn't. In contrast, the free West offers endless economic opportunities, leading us to prioritize appearances over authenticity. Trust becomes secondary to presentation. Consequently, we learn to put on a mask, to say pleasant things even when we don't mean them, to pretend to be friends with people we don't genuinely care for. Our economy promotes deception, and we become adept at pretending to be likable. The problem is, we never quite know whether we can fully trust the person in front of us, even among close friends or family. Our societal emphasis on positivity can lead to a peculiar notion, that we should always accept and affirm. But what happens when we avoid rejection altogether? We lose our compass, drifting aimlessly without direction or purpose. True fulfillment comes from focusing on what matters most, and that requires saying no to alternatives. Think about it, if you decide that your marriage is the core of your life, you might also choose not to prioritize partying or substance abuse. Choosing a value involves rejecting others. It's a delicate balance between embracing what brings you joy and letting go of what holds you back. In the end, it's this dance between acceptance and rejection that shapes our lives. By embracing the discomfort of rejection, we gain clarity and depth. So, let's take a page from the Russian's book, Speak Our Minds, even when it's hard. Maybe, just maybe, we'll find a new kind of freedom in being truthful, and a deeper connection with those around us. Let's talk about the importance of rejection in our lives. You see, when we prioritize certain aspects of our lives, we're simultaneously rejecting others. For instance, if I'm choosing to focus on building meaningful relationships, that means I'm rejecting the idea of fleeting, superficial connections. If I'm prioritizing my career, I'm rejecting the notion of idleness and complacency. Now, let's consider the concept of valuing something. To truly value something, we must first recognize what it is not. Think about it, if we value kindness, we must reject cruelty, if we value honesty, we must reject dishonesty. Rejection becomes an integral part of defining ourselves and our identities. But here's the thing, some people struggle with rejection. They're afraid to say no or set boundaries, fearing it might lead to conflict or hurt feelings. This avoidance of rejection can stem from a deep-seated sense of entitlement, the feeling that we should always feel great, all the time. However, this mindset leads to a valueless, pleasure-driven existence. We've all been there, stuck in a relationship that's not fulfilling us or a job that drains our passion. Yet, we choose these situations again and again. Honesty is a fundamental aspect of living, but it requires embracing the discomfort of rejection. Saying no can actually strengthen our relationships and improve our emotional well-being. Let's take the classic tale of Romeo and Juliet. On the surface, it appears to be a beautiful love story, but scratch beneath the surface, and you'll find two impulsive teenagers who made reckless choices, ultimately leading to tragic consequences. Scholars argue that Shakespeare intended to satirize the romantic ideals presented in the story, highlighting the dangers of blind passion and impulsivity. Historically, romantic love wasn't always celebrated. In fact, it was viewed as a potential obstacle to more pressing concerns like financial security and social stability. Today, however, we're enamored with the idea of grand, dramatic love stories. Our pop culture is saturated with tales of sacrifice, heartbreak, and all-consuming passion. But here's the thing, these narratives aren't necessarily healthy representations of love. Think of romantic love as a potent stimulant, much like cocaine. It may provide temporary highs, but it also creates numerous problems in its wake. Many aspects of romantic love we idolize, the over-the-top displays of affection, the roller coaster emotions, are actually manifestations of entitlement, masquerading as love. So, what does this mean for us? It means recognizing that our cultural obsession with romantic love might be misguided. Perhaps it's time to reevaluate our priorities and strive for a more balanced, genuine approach to relationships. By acknowledging the importance of rejection and setting boundaries, we can cultivate healthier, more meaningful connections with others. Let's dive deeper into the world of relationships and explore the delicate dance of love, boundaries, and responsibility. We've all been there, swept up in the whirlwind of romance, convinced that our partner is the answer to all our prayers. But scratch beneath the surface, and you'll often find a tangled web of unhealthy patterns and blurred lines of responsibility. Now, before you think I'm a total downer, let me ask you this, what kind of love are we talking about here? Is it the kind that lets us escape our problems through our emotions for each other, like a temporary reprieve from reality? Or is it the kind that acknowledges and addresses our own issues together, side by side? You see, the difference between a healthy and unhealthy relationship lies in two key areas. 1. how well each person takes responsibility for their own stuff, and 2, the willingness of each person to both reject and be rejected by their partner. It's not rocket science, folks. Now, when we talk about boundaries, I'm not referring to those rigid walls we sometimes build around ourselves. No, I mean the clear-cut distinction between two people's responsibilities for their own problems. When we're in a healthy relationship, we own our own values and issues, and we don't take ownership of our partners. On the other hand, when we're in a toxic relationship, we either sidestep our own responsibilities or jump headfirst into solving our partner's problems. Think about it, what does poor boundary setting look like? Imagine someone saying, "You can't hang out with your friends unless I tag along," or "My coworkers are incompetent, you need to babysit them." These scenarios scream entitlement. We're essentially saying, "Hey, you're responsible for my feelings and problems." Entitlement rears its ugly head in two primary ways: either we demand others take responsibility for our emotions and issues, or we take on too much responsibility for others' problems. Newsflash, neither approach leads to true happiness or fulfillment. As we navigate our relationships, we must recognize that entitled individuals tend to fall into one of two traps. Either they expect others to fix their problems or they take on too much responsibility for others' issues. Both approaches lead to shallow connections and strained relationships. But here's the thing, these behaviors aren't unique to romantic partnerships. They seep into family relationships and friendships as well. Think of an overbearing parent who consistently swoops in to fix their child's problems. This behavior fosters entitlement in their kids, who grow up believing others should solve their problems. That's why your romantic relationship often mirrors the dynamics in your parents' partnership. When we're unclear about our responsibilities and boundaries, our relationships become fragile and insincere. Our only value becomes making our partner happy, or vice versa. That's a recipe for disaster. Relationships built on murkiness rarely thrive. Instead, they're marked by constant conflict and tension. So, here's the takeaway: people can't solve our problems for us, nor should they try. A healthy relationship is built on two individuals solving their own problems while supporting each other, not relying on each other for emotional salvation. Entitlement creeps in when we blame others for our emotions or take the blame for others' emotions. We do so because we believe someone will eventually come along and rescue us, granting us the love we crave. Alternatively, we might think that fixing our partner's problems will earn us the love and appreciation we desire. These two personas, the victim and the savior, form a toxic dynamic. They're drawn to each other because their pathologies complement each other. Sometimes, they even learn these behaviors from their own parents. Their idea of a happy relationship is rooted in entitlement and poor boundaries. Unfortunately, they both miss the mark, failing to meet each other's true needs. In reality, their pattern of over-blaming and over-responsibility creates a cycle of dysfunction. Now, I want to leave you with a question: what kind of relationship do you want to cultivate? One built on healthy boundaries, mutual respect, and individual responsibility? Or one founded on entitlement and blurred lines? The choice is yours. Here's the rewritten script. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where one partner is always playing the victim and the other is always trying to rescue them? Sounds familiar, right? Well, let me tell you, this dynamic is a recipe for disaster. Their idea of a happy relationship is built on entitlement and poor boundaries. In these toxic relationships, both partners fail to meet each other's true needs. Instead, they're stuck in a cycle of over-blaming and over-accepting blame, which reinforces their entitlement issues and low self-esteem. The victim expects the other to fix their problems, not because they genuinely need help, but because they crave attention and affection. Meanwhile, the rescuer tries to save the day, not because they truly care about the problem, but because they believe they need to earn attention and validation by fixing others' issues. Now, imagine if the victim really cared about their partner. Would they say, "Hey, I've got this problem, you don't need to fix it for me. Just support me while I figure it out myself"? Ah, now that's what I call love, taking responsibility for your own problems and not expecting your partner to carry the weight. And conversely, if the rescuer really wanted to help, they'd say, "Listen, you're blaming everyone else for your problems, maybe it's time to take ownership." That might seem harsh, but trust me, it's a form of love, encouraging the other person to grow and learn from their mistakes. These couples are addicted to the emotional highs they get from each other's drama-filled interactions. When faced with emotionally healthy partners, they often find them boring or lacking chemistry. It's because secure individuals have strong boundaries that don't feed their entitled desires. Victims struggle with accountability, having spent their lives believing others are responsible for their fate. Taking ownership of their problems is terrifying for them. Savers, on the other hand, are scared to let go of their need to rescue others, as it's made them feel valued and loved throughout their lives. Real acts of love shouldn't be done out of obligation or fear, they should be voluntary and unconditional. A simple litmus test to check if your relationship is based on love or conditionality is to ask yourself, what happens if I refuse to give in to my partner's demands? Or, what if my partner refuses to do what I want? If the response is a dramatic blow-up, it's a red flag. Your relationship is likely built on superficial benefits rather than mutual acceptance and understanding. Strong boundaries aren't about being reckless or insensitive, they're about respecting each other's autonomy and differences. People with robust boundaries aren't intimidated by disagreements or arguments. They know it's impossible to please each other 100%, and that occasional hurt feelings are inevitable. Healthy relationships are about supporting each other's growth and solving individual problems, not controlling each other's emotions. Unconditional love isn't about mirroring our partner's values or interests, it's about caring for them unconditionally, no matter what. My wife, for instance, takes a long time getting ready, but I appreciate her authenticity. Even when she asks for feedback on her appearance and I offer constructive criticism, she knows I'm coming from a place of love and respect. I remember one evening when she asked how she looked, and I told her she wasn't pulling off a particular hairstyle. Her reaction wasn't pretty, but she listened to my feedback and took it constructively. We didn't have a big argument, instead, we had an open conversation about why she liked the style and how we could compromise. That's what I love about our relationship, we prioritize honesty and communication over sugarcoating each other's feelings. Let's face it, honesty is crucial in any relationship. Being brutally honest with each other might sting at times, but it builds trust and intimacy. Don't you think it's refreshing to be around someone who accepts your imperfections and encourages you to grow? That's what I experience with my wife, and I couldn't ask for more. Let's dive deeper into the complexities of relationships and trust. We've all been there, our ego gets bruised, we argue, and we try to convince ourselves that our partner was wrong. But ultimately, when we're forced to confront reality, we acknowledge that our partner might have been right. And you know what? That moment of surrender can be incredibly liberating. It's a reminder that our partner can indeed make us better people, even when we're not ready to admit it. But what happens when our relationship becomes a battleground, where our primary goal is to make ourselves or our partner feel good? Newsflash. Nobody wins in that scenario. Our relationship starts to crumble beneath us, and before we know it, we're left wondering why things fell apart. Disappointment Panda would tell you that conflicts are an inevitable part of any relationship. They're a necessary evil that help us identify who's truly committed to us, flaws and all, versus those who are just looking out for number one. Trust is built on the foundation of open communication, disagreements, and the willingness to listen to each other's perspectives. Healthy relationships require a delicate balance between saying yes and no. Without that push-pull dynamic, boundaries blur, and one person's issues begin to dictate the entire partnership. Conflict isn't just normal, it's essential for maintaining a thriving relationship. Think about it, if two partners aren't able to navigate their differences effectively, their bond becomes transactional, built on manipulation and half-truths. It's a recipe for toxicity. Now, let's talk about trust. It's the bedrock upon which every relationship stands. Without it, words of affection and commitment are empty promises. Trust is what turns statements of love into genuine expressions of devotion. When trust is shattered, it's not just about the infidelity itself, but about the underlying values that led to it. The real issue isn't the sex, it's the lack of integrity that comes with it. Imagine receiving an email from someone whose partner cheated, yet they're eager to reconcile. They wonder how to regain trust, but the truth is, trust can't be regained unless the cheater acknowledges their true values and demonstrates a genuine desire to change. It's not just about apologies or empty promises, it's about confronting the root causes of the betrayal. Cheating reveals what's truly important to the cheater. Is it power, validation, or simply acting on impulse? Whatever the reason, it's clear that their values aren't aligned with building a healthy relationship. If the cheater doesn't take responsibility for their actions or genuinely work to understand their motivations, there's little hope for redemption. Rebuilding trust requires a two-step process: acknowledgement of the values that led to the infidelity and a consistent track record of improved behavior. Don't just take the cheater's word for it, look for tangible changes that demonstrate their commitment to growth. Think of trust like a delicate china plate. If you break it once, you can repair it with care and attention. However, repeated instances of breaking trust lead to irreparable damage. Eventually, the pieces become too fragmented, and restoration becomes impossible. In the midst of consumer culture's relentless pursuit of more, we often forget that sometimes less is indeed more. We're sold a bill of goods promising that more money, experiences, and connections will bring happiness. But what if I told you that's a myth? What if the key to fulfillment lies not in accumulation but in meaningful relationships, built on trust, vulnerability, and open communication? That's the paradox of freedom through commitment, embracing the unknown, taking risks, and choosing to prioritize connection over convenience. By doing so, we create space for authentic relationships to flourish, ones that weather life's storms and stand strong against the tests of time. Here's the rewritten script, condensed to about 50% of the original content, with added retention hooks and a smoother flow. As I look back on my life, I've come to realize that the notion that more is always better has held me back for too long. I used to think that having more money, traveling to more countries, and experiencing more things would bring me happiness. But research suggests that's not the case. In fact, the more options we're given, the less satisfied we become with our choices. This is known as the paradox of choice. Imagine you have a choice between two places to live, and you pick one. You'll likely feel confident and satisfied with your decision. But if you have 28 places to choose from, you might spend years agonizing over which one to select, wondering if you've made the right choice. This anxiety, fueled by a desire for certainty and perfection, can lead to unhappiness. I used to try to keep my options open as long as possible, avoiding commitment altogether. But I've come to understand that investing deeply in one person, place, or activity can actually offer a wealth of opportunities and experiences that wouldn't be available through a broad range of shallow experiences. Think about it, when you're trying to explore every aspect of life, each new experience becomes less impactful. The first time you travel abroad can be life-changing, but the 20th trip doesn't quite have the same effect. Similarly, the first time you fall in love is often more memorable than the 10th or 11th. As we accumulate experiences, their significance diminishes. My journey towards embracing commitment began when I started letting go of superficial pursuits and focusing on what truly mattered to me. I stopped juggling multiple business projects and dedicated myself to writing full-time. To my surprise, my website gained popularity beyond my wildest dreams. I committed to a meaningful relationship and found joy in the depth of connection rather than the thrill of novelty. By rejecting distractions and focusing on what truly matters, I discovered a sense of freedom and liberation. Commitment sets you free because it helps you prioritize what's truly important. It eliminates the noise of unnecessary options and directs your energy towards achieving your goals. With commitment comes clarity and confidence, you know what you want, and you're willing to work towards it. Why worry about missing out when you've got what you need? The irony is that commitment often leads to greater success and satisfaction than constantly seeking more. Depth is where the real value lies. So, don't be afraid to commit to something that truly matters. Stay focused, stay dedicated, and you'll find that the rewards far outweigh the risks. And remember, the truth is, we're all going to die someday. But what we leave behind is what truly matters. Seek the truth for yourself, and you'll find that commitment is key to living a fulfilling life. Note, I removed some sections that seemed redundant or didn't fit the tone of the rest of the script. I also tried to maintain the author's voice and personality throughout the rewrite. Let me know if you'd like me to revise anything further. The memories of that fateful summer still linger vividly in my mind. It was a time of reckoning, of youthful angst, and of the kind of reckless abandon that only comes with being young. I recall the nights spent drinking beers and talking with my friend Josh, discussing the latest music trends, our favorite bands, and the thrill of living in the moment. As we sat on the edge of the lake, I asked him, "Hey, is it okay to jump off that," gesturing toward the cliff. He shrugged, "Yeah, people do it all the time here." I pressed on, "Are you going to do it?" His nonchalant response left me wondering what he truly meant. Later that evening, I found myself distracted by a lovely Asian girl who shared my passion for video games, a stroke of luck, indeed. She was friendly and chatty, and I mustered the courage to invite her to grab some food with me. As we walked up the hill, we bumped into Josh heading down, and I asked him to join us, but he politely declined. His parting words still echo in my mind, "Seek the truth for yourself, and I'll meet you there." I laughed along with him, but deep down, I wasn't entirely sure what he meant. Josh continued down the hill towards the cliff, leaving me with a sense of unease. Before I knew it, the party had dispersed, and sirens pierced the night air. I stumbled upon a chaotic scene by the lake's shore, with people rushing towards the water. My stomach knotted as I realized something was terribly wrong. When I finally reached the crowd, a girl burst into tears, and I frantically asked about Josh's whereabouts. The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't until much later that I pieced together the devastating truth: Josh had jumped from the cliff and drowned in the lake. The autopsy revealed that dehydration and the impact of the fall contributed to his tragic fate. Little did I know, he struggled with swimming. The weight of his passing hit me like a ton of bricks. It took me 12 hours to break down in tears, and even then, it was a reluctant release. Driving home to Austin the next morning, I called my dad, struggling to hold back the tears. His gentle inquiry, "What happened? Everything all right?" triggered the dam to burst. I sobbed uncontrollably, feeling a depth of sadness I'd never experienced before. That summer marked a turning point in my life. I succumbed to a profound depression, questioning the very fabric of existence. People tried to lift my spirits, but I couldn't muster a genuine smile. I felt numb, trapped in a sea of despair. I began to question everything: my priorities, my values, my purpose. One particular dream stood out: a conversation with Josh in a jacuzzi, where I apologized for his passing, and he retorted, "Why are you worried about me being dead when you're too afraid to live?" Those words struck a chord within me, forcing me to confront the emptiness head-on. Sitting on my mom's couch, staring into the void, I had an epiphany: if there's no inherent meaning to life, then why should I conform to societal expectations? Why should I be bound by fears, doubts, and insecurities? In that instant, I decided to shake off my apathy, quit smoking and gaming, and pursue my passions with renewed vigor. I enrolled in college courses, joined a fitness regimen, and slowly rebuilt my social connections. Josh's passing served as a wake-up call, propelling me forward. I discovered a newfound sense of purpose, pushing me to excel academically and personally. Looking back, I realized that tragedy can sometimes be a catalyst for transformation. Imagine living through a moment that changes you irreversibly, a moment that shakes you to your core and propels you into a new trajectory. For me, that moment was Josh's passing. Before his death, I was stuck in a rut, crippled by the fear of what others might think of me. I was hesitant to take risks, unsure of myself, and confined by the expectations of others. But after Josh's passing, I felt a sudden surge of purpose. I became more responsible, more driven, and more willing to take chances. It was as if someone else's death had given me permission to finally live. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, death itself. We're terrified of it, aren't we? We avoid talking about it, thinking about it, and often even acknowledging it, even when it's right in front of us. Yet, paradoxically, death serves as the yardstick by which we measure the significance of life. If death didn't exist, wouldn't everything seem inconsequential, arbitrary, and meaningless? Enter Ernest Becker, a maverick thinker who dared to challenge conventional wisdom. As an academic outcast, Becker's unconventional approach to Zen Buddhism and psychoanalysis raised eyebrows in the early 1960s. He was fired from his first job for his bold views, but undeterred, he continued to push boundaries. He landed at Berkeley, but his unorthodox teaching methods soon earned him another pink slip. Becker's journey took him to San Francisco State University, where he found himself at odds with authority once again. This time, he stood with the students protesting the Vietnam War, condemning the actions of his dean. Another firing ensued. For times in 6 years, Becker had been dismissed from his positions. Just as he was getting settled into a new role, he received a devastating diagnosis: colon cancer. With little hope of survival, Becker decided to channel his energy into writing a book about death. That book, The Denial of Death, went on to win the Pulitzer Prize and revolutionize the fields of psychology and anthropology. Becker made 2 groundbreaking claims. First, he argued that humans possess a unique capacity for abstract thought, allowing us to ponder our own existence, past, present, and future. This cognitive gift enables us to conceptualize hypothetical scenarios, including our own mortality. As a result, we experience death terror, a fundamental existential anxiety that drives our thoughts and actions. Second, Becker proposed that we have 2 selves, the physical self and the conceptual self. While our physical self is mortal, our conceptual self, shaped by our identities, can potentially transcend mortality. To cope with the fear of our physical demise, we create immortality projects, endeavors aimed at leaving a lasting legacy, whether through art, literature, politics, or family. These projects allow our conceptual selves to persist beyond our physical deaths, influencing generations to come. According to Becker, all of human civilization is built upon these immortality projects. Cities, governments, and institutions are the remnants of individuals' attempts to leave an indelible mark on the world. As I reflect on Becker's insights, I'm reminded that even in the darkest moments, there lies potential for growth and transformation. Josh's passing taught me that sometimes, it takes a shockwave to awaken us to our true potential. What about you? Have you ever experienced a moment that shook you to your core and propelled you toward a new path? As we journey through the complexities of human existence, let's take a step back and acknowledge the profound impact of our collective endeavors. The cities, governments, structures, and authorities that shape our modern world are the remnants of the immortality projects of individuals who came before us. These pioneers, such as Jesus, Muhammad, Napoleon, and Shakespeare, continue to wield immense influence, even beyond their lifetimes. Their legacies serve as testaments to humanity's innate drive to transcend mortality. This drive, according to Eric Barker's book, manifests in various forms: artistic expression, conquests, wealth, and family legacies that endure through generations. Religion, politics, sports, art, and technological innovations are all born from this quest for immortality. When these projects clash, conflicts arise, and centuries-old oppressions are justified as the defense of one group's immortality project against another's. However, when our personal immortality projects falter, when the sense of meaning and purpose begins to wane, the specter of death anxiety rears its ugly head. Trauma, shame, social ridicule, and even mental illness can trigger this existential dread. Our values, the very fabric of our being, begin to unravel, leaving us feeling lost and vulnerable. Barker's profound insight lies in recognizing that our immortality projects are, in essence, the driving forces behind our actions. We're drawn to things that distract us from the crushing reality of our mortality. But what if we were to adopt a different perspective? What if we could learn to accept our impermanence without succumbing to despair? On the rugged coastline of South Africa's Cape of Good Hope, I find myself standing at the edge of the world. The wind howls across my skin, whipping my hair into a frenzy. I'm acutely aware of the infinite expanse before me, the seemingly endless blue horizon stretching out to meet the sky. It's as if I've reached the threshold of the unknown. A local phrase echoes in my mind, Ele dobra o cabo da boa esperança. It translates to, he's rounding the Cape of Good Hope, signifying that one's life is nearing its end, that further accomplishments seem impossible. I breathe in the salty air, my heart pounding with excitement and trepidation. As I take my first step toward the precipice, my body rebels. A primal instinct kicks in, urging me to retreat. My senses heighten, and I feel a magnetic pull drawing me back to safety. Yet, I resist, inching forward, transfixed by the void below. The wind buffets me, threatening to disrupt my balance. 5 feet away from the edge, my mind intervenes, conjuring vivid images of falls and fatal consequences. It's a sobering reminder of the unforgiving power of nature. My inner voice cautions me, warning of the perils that lie ahead. And still, I push on, refusing to heed the warnings. 3 feet from the edge, my entire being goes on high alert, as if a single misstep would seal my fate. But I press onward, my footfalls steady, my heart racing with anticipation. What if this is it? What if this is all there is? The question hangs in the air, taunting me, as I stand poised on the precipice, the universe unfolding before me like a canvas of endless possibility. In this fleeting instant, I am free to choose, to confront the abyss or to surrender to its mystery. The choice is mine, and mine alone. Let's take a deep dive into the human experience, shall we? You're standing at the edge of the precipice, staring down into the void, wondering. Are you ready to take the leap? No, don't move yet. Just breathe, and let's explore this existential crisis together. We've all been there, haven't we? That 3-foot threshold where our minds go into hyperdrive, our hearts start racing, and our voices whisper reassuringly, it's okay, you're safe. But what if it's not? What if this is it? Is this all there is? Have we learned everything we'll ever know? The uncertainty is palpable. As I took another step closer, my forward leg vibrated beneath me. I shuffled on, against my better judgment, against the magnetic pull of safety. And then, I reached the 2-foot mark. Suddenly, anything but looking straight down seemed like a betrayal of the sky itself. We become detached, unmoored from the world, and our fears begin to surface. At 1 foot, the abyss yawns open, and we're suspended in mid-air, waiting for the inevitable. Our minds start to wander, conjuring up worst-case scenarios. The wind howls, and our thoughts come crashing down, making it difficult to breathe. We're caught between the thrill of adventure and the terror of the unknown. But what if we could silence the chatter in our minds? What if we could confront our deepest fears head-on? As I sat on the edge, gazing out at the vast expanse, something shifted inside me. The anxiety became manageable, and I began to focus on the horizon. The wind whipped through my hair, and I felt invigorated, connected to something greater than myself. Being present, being mindful, and facing our mortality, isn't that the ultimate liberation? By embracing the unknown, we free ourselves from the shackles of superficial values and petty concerns. We realize that true fulfillment lies not in accumulating wealth or fame, but in leaving a lasting impact on the world. Mark Twain once said, "The fear of death follows from the fear of life." A man who lives fully is prepared to die at any time. When we stop running from our own mortality, we discover that the impermanence of life is what gives it meaning. It's a paradox, isn't it? The only constant in life is change, and yet, it's the only thing we can be certain of. So, let's return to that edge, shall we? Let's sit down, take a deep breath, and gaze out at the vast expanse. What mark will we leave on this world? How will we make a difference? Will we choose to live a life of purpose, or will we let trivialities guide us? The choice is ours, and the answer lies in confronting our own mortality. Imagine if we could answer all the questions we've been asking ourselves but never dare to ask aloud. The secret to feeling comfortable with death lies in understanding and seeing ourselves as part of something bigger than ourselves. It's about choosing values that transcend personal interests, values that are simple, immediate, and controllable, and can tolerate the chaos surrounding us. This is the fundamental foundation of happiness. Whether it's Aristotle, Harvard psychologists, or even the Beatles, everyone agrees that happiness stems from caring about something greater than oneself, believing we're part of a larger entity, and our lives being just a small part of a grand, incomprehensible creation. People seek this feeling in churches, fight for it in wars, raise families, work hard, and innovate, all for a fleeting sense of belonging to something greater and unknown. Entitlement, however, strips us of this perspective. Its gravitational pull draws attention inward, making us believe we're the epicenter of all problems, victims of injustice, and deserving of greatness above others. Entitlement isolates us, making our curiosity and enthusiasm for the world revolve around our biases and projections onto others. This dynamic plagues us today. Despite material prosperity, we're plagued by psychological torment in superficial ways. People shirk responsibility, demanding society cater to their feelings and expectations. They cling to arbitrary certainties and impose them on others, sometimes violently, under the guise of a fabricated righteous cause. Others, driven by a sense of false superiority, become inactive and lethargic due to the fear of failure. The pampered modern mind leads to a population that feels entitled to things without putting in effort, expecting rewards without sacrifice. People proclaim themselves experts, entrepreneurs, innovators, and coaches without actual experience. They do this not because they genuinely believe they're superior, but because they feel they must be exceptional to be accepted in a world celebrating the extraordinary. We confuse great attention and great success, assuming they're synonymous. But they're not. You're already great, regardless of whether you acknowledge it or not. Your greatness isn't defined by launching an iPhone app, finishing school early, or buying a luxury item. You're great because, despite the uncertainty of life and the inevitability of death, you continue to choose what matters to you and what doesn't. This simple act of valuing your own existence already makes you beautiful, successful, and loved. Even if you're struggling, even if you're sleeping in a gutter and starving. Your mortality reminds you that life is precious, and that awareness brings people together. Yet, we're often consumed by trivialities and paralyzed by fear. As Charles Bukowski once said, we're all going to die. What a circus! That alone should make us love each other, but it doesn't. I recall the night I witnessed my friend Josh's body being pulled out of the lake by paramedics. Staring into the dark sky, I felt my ego dissipate. That moment taught me more than I initially understood. It showed me the importance of living in the present, taking responsibility for my choices, and pursuing my dreams without shame. But the primary lesson I learned that night was this: there's nothing to be afraid of ever again. Reminding myself of my mortality, whether through meditation, philosophy, or standing on a cliff in South Africa, has helped me grasp this truth. Accepting my own fragility has made everything easier, letting go of addictions, confronting my entitlement, and accepting responsibility for my problems. As I stood on the cliff in South Africa, I felt the wind blowing gently against my skin. I took a deep breath, letting the vastness of the landscape fill my lungs. As I began to walk back to reality, I noticed a man approaching me. He had an Australian accent, and his gaze was intense. "Excuse me," he said, pointing towards the horizon, "I saw you sitting over there." "Yeah, the view is stunning, isn't it?" I replied, smiling. He didn't return the smile. His expression was somber. In that moment, I realized that true greatness wasn't about achievements or possessions, but about recognizing the beauty in the everyday, the preciousness of life, and the interconnectedness of human experiences. As we stood on the windswept summit, gazing out at the breathtaking vista of Antarctica's icy expanse, I couldn't help but notice the Australian beside me was struggling to contain a grin. "Yeah, the view is pretty incredible," right?" he said, trying to sound nonchalant despite the hint of awe creeping into his voice. I beamed with excitement, while he remained stoic, his brow furrowed in concern. I brushed off my jacket, still reeling from our, earlier encounter, and gave him a playful smile. "Alive," I replied, savoring the rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins. "Very alive." The tension broke, and he cracked a smile, nodding slightly before heading down the trail. I lingered, taking in the surreal beauty of our surroundings, waiting for my friends to join me on this mountaintop adventure. Pauses. As I sit here now, reflecting on this journey, I'm reminded that getting to this point wasn't possible without the help of some incredible individuals. My wife, Fernanda, my partner in every sense of the word, deserves special thanks for her unwavering support and brutal honesty throughout this process. "You're the sunshine that brightens up even the darkest days, babe." To my parents, I'm grateful for your patience and love over the years. It's funny how growing up can be a lifelong process, and I'm glad I've gotten to experience it alongside you. My brother, too, despite our occasional texting misadventures, our bond remains strong. I also want to acknowledge the brilliant minds that helped shape this manuscript, Philip Kemper and Drew Burney, whose intellects blew me away time and again. Michael Covell, you're the ultimate fact-checker, I appreciate your sharp eye and willingness to challenge my assumptions. Luke Dempsey, your editorial sword is mightier than mine, and I'm grateful for your precision. Molly Glick, you helped me find the book's true north, and I'm honored by your dedication to sharing it with the world. Taylor Pearson, Dan Andrews, and Jody Ettenberg, you three kept me grounded and inspired, which is exactly what any writer needs. Lastly, to the millions of readers who took a chance on this guy from Boston, sharing their stories and vulnerabilities with me, it's been an honor to connect with you all. Your trust and openness have left me speechless, but also deeply humbled. Thank you for joining me on this wild ride.